Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Jeff, are we all set?
We're good.
Ready to go? Okay. And Jeff, just one last question. We're recording and all set?
I think that's what it said.
Okay. Yeah, I see. Okay. I just wanted to check. Start everything back up. Okay. I'd like to call to order the February 22nd, 2022 workshop on the town council draft bylaws. Do we remember which page we stopped?
We stopped on page 14, bottom.
Okay. All right, so we will pick up from there. So if anyone has any concerns for the bottom.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I could just remind the council at the last meeting, we had a question that I had been asked to look into about more or less whether it would be appropriate to ask the town sergeant as opposed to the police department to be called upon if you wanted an officer at a meeting for security reasons. I think that the council this afternoon would have received a memo that had been written about the powers and duties of the town sergeant position, and based on that, I would suggest that that section be worded so that it would be the police chief or a police officer that would provide security.
That's on page 13.
That is, mine page numbers are different than the
Section
copy.
120.
Section 120A.
Mhm.
Sergeant at arms. So would we, so your recommendation is to strike A and then,
Well, I think that it makes sense, I think, just to say that,
oh, state or municipal officers are duly appointed, yeah.
I would say that either the police chief or a police officer that he designates would serve as the sergeant of arms, upon the request of the council or the town manager.
Actually, that's, A doesn't talk about what you're talking about.
I didn't see the memo today, but I do have a question, and that is that based on state law? Did you check state law in the policy?
Yes, it was actually a memo that the prior solicitor, Pat Buckley, had written. When Lisa came back from her vacation, I checked in with her and she remembered that question had already been answered, and she was able to find the old memo
I
and it had all
remember
the
when
citations.
she answered that, but
Yes, well, I agreed with the conclusions that she reached, and she had all the state statutes attached to the memo as well. And Lisa sent that around this afternoon.
You want me to read it to you, Scott?
No,
There's just really small
I remember
amount.
when Pat Buckley said that, and every lawyer has different criteria or understanding of statutes, but historically, the office of town sergeants existed in all these small towns since the 1700s. So I know in some places, a person that had that was a retired police officer or somebody that before we had a permanent police force in town, we had constables or, regular officers in reserve. They worked in a mill or electric boat, and they did police duties before we had a full-time police department.
Right. Well, as of today, we have no duties for that position that are listed in the town's charter or the ordinances, and the state laws that apply to town sergeants don't give them any type of law enforcement type of authority. So I would suggest if security for a meeting is necessary, that we would want to turn to the police department for that.
Well, just to give you a background, historically, the town sergeant goes to those meetings and has. And what they do is they usually count voters and they check with the board of canvassers, and I'm sure Lisa would remember.
Right. The statutes speak to the officer, the town sergeant participating in the financial town meeting. And I think this is more just for ordinary town council meetings, this section of the bylaws.
Right,
I don't think this would prevent the town sergeant from carrying out whatever duties they would normally have at a financial town meeting or otherwise. But I think for just an ordinary council meeting, I recommend the police department.
Yeah, absolutely. Wouldn't, go ahead, Sharon.
I was just going to
apologize.
say, for the record, the email from Pat Buckley to William McGarry dated April 18th, 2014, said her conclusion from reviewing the law is that the town sergeant has only two duties and no others. One, service of process, such as writs and summonses within the county to the extent that this is otherwise allowed by law, section 4516-4 and 2. -4. And the second duty is removal and confinement of disorderly persons from the financial town assembly at the direction of the town moderator. And that's section 45-3-19. That's it. Those are the only two duties that they have. So
So when
we should
we,
probably change something. I'm not sure that, that 120, section 120 says anything.
while you're looking, I think, I mean, for the most part, I think we could strike sergeant at arms, town sergeant shall be sergeant at arms at town council meetings and start A with state for municipal police officer. I mean, do we need to have state? I mean, can we just write municipal police officers? I mean,
Municipal or that.
right, because we're way past the point where we're relying on state
Well,
police officers.
I can tell you that the town this was written for does not have a local police department. So that is why there would be a reference to the state police there. That wouldn't apply here in Hopkinton.
Understood. That's kind of why I brought that reference up.
So
Where
you wanna-
I think the issue is simply this. For example, in the town of Wesley, the town sergeant is always there, or a police officer. Hopkinton traditionally does not have police presence at a
every
meeting, at a regular town council meeting. So the bigger question is, if this was put into this place, would we have to pay a police officer every time we have a meeting of the council?
I got one.
So I think we got to be very careful about the wording.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we might be obligated to have a police officer every time the council meets. I'm just putting that out there.
sure, Counselor Geary.
I agree with everybody, but I think it would be, maybe we could just leave it as sergeant at arms or a member of Hopkinton Police Force be present when the town council president feels the need for one or something along that line.
I could write something that I think would kind of.
You kind of melt that together a little bit. Yeah, I mean, my biggest concern is that like, Steve was talking about not having a police force,
Right.
like a full-time police force would just be
Yeah, I don't want to tie
like
up,
liability type of stuff too.
I don't want to tie up,
You know what I mean?
tie up one of our,
Well, right, not in a general standard. I mean, Scott knows, I mean, what meetings we
Right.
potentially may have.
oh, trust me, I've been.
some
not
sort of
necessarily
issue,
here,
so,
but in some heated
I mean,
ones.
that's kind of at the discretion. I mean, we could put, I mean, it is, I mean,
Yeah, I'd just say like, if we're gonna have something, say, all of a sudden we're gonna ban VWs in town. Okay, you see that as, oh, hey, wait a minute, we're VW community or something.
Right.
Something along that line, and you feel that there's gonna be an overwhelming presence of objecting people and a lot of insignificant comments and viciousness. You could say, hey, maybe we could have the town sergeant or a member of the town authorities just stand in for the meeting in case
Yeah.
someone gets unruly or something like that. You know what I'm saying, Steve? Something
no,
along
I
that
understand
line.
what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. I though, for one, just think that, the sergeant of arms, I mean, we're not getting rid of obviously the title. I mean, these are just council bylaws for town council meetings, not even public hearings, not even for the financial town meetings. Is that necessarily because I'm not moderating it. There's a moderator for it. He's controlling it.
Mhm.
So for this particular discussion and our bylaws, I think if the sergeant at arms is not going to have any responsibility at a town council meeting, then there is no need for any language in this ordinance for a sergeant. Does that make sense? Because,
Mm.
go ahead, Counselor.
When I look at this, I keep going back to the role we're trying to define here is someone who's going to maintain order and decorum. To me, that the main requirement for that is someone who's trained to do that.
Right,
And
and
that's-
de-escalation type of
And
situation.
that's a police officer.
Right.
I would not want to put that responsibility on someone who is in an elected position.
You also have liability issue, like the
Exactly.
police are just covered, they're
Exactly.
trained,
Right.
they're on our insurance policy. I don't even know that the sergeant thing is more than a moderate act. So it's just, I mean, police are the.
I think probably this whole section should be discarded.
I agree.
There's no prohibition for the town council president or anybody else to ask for police presence, so if
I
it
agree.
need be, so there's no reason to have this section.
You think we could just remove all of section 120?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that. I mean, if we were leaving it, I was arguing for my language.
I mean, whether it's written in the bylaws or not, the council president or the town manager could always call the police chief and ask him to have someone available at a meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's just layering it and just a whole nother.
But
And Chief Palmer also, he keeps track of what's going on, and
Sure.
he will
Yeah.
come, or he'll ask Captain Carrier to come.
Excellent.
So, you know, they're proactive
Yeah.
about it too.
Awesome.
I'm good with that.
Are we all good with that?
Yeah.
Striking that section?
Strike it.
Can we go to section 121, just at the bottom of page 13,
Sure.
sign-in sheets? It says may be provided for participants listing printed name, address, signature. After we go through this, I question capacity. what the
Yes, I had
capacity
already
is.
crossed that out as we would.
Okay, that's gone. Okay, thank you. All right.
So then the order of the agenda, now this is for hearings, right? Isn't this? Yeah, at public hearings. So this is a little different than regular town council business. So
yeah,
this
right.
is more of a formal, you know what I mean? It's not town business per se, it's business before the town. So
Is this sign-in sheet going to be including people who might have a complaint or comment about people granting licenses and things of that nature, or strictly,
This is for hearing.
we have a hearing on licenses.
Yeah, we do.
we do.
Hearings aren't limited to zoning changes, they're
Yeah.
involve
Right.
licenses and everything else.
That's fine.
And usually there's no complaint unless there's, some rowdiness or something in an establishment and somebody might complain. But
Right.
Historically, these things are done routinely, but you want to go through the requirement to have.
Well, some of these are not going to apply to it
Yeah.
either. You know what I mean? I mean, we could make it more specific, as what kind of hearing it is.
You might have
I think
somebody who wants to get up and say they're good people and that community spirited, or there was an incident that we
Well, there's
resolved.
testimony of proponents. If you go through the order here, I mean, some of them will apply. Again, I don't know if that's how we would want to handle it. I mean, some of it's obviously that doesn't apply, so we're not going to recall, go down the list. I mean, obviously, if we're approving, trash licenses, then I mean, this seems kind of nuts. You know what I mean? We're not going to go through each in order. I mean, I think the process at which we do our vehicular license and stuff like that works fine. But Lisa, you had your hand up, did you?
So you want to have just a generic sign-in sheet that we can just have on clipboard and then use as needed.
Mhm.
And that's for participants, right? That's not for
Mhm.
people who are just sitting, because we don't, I mean, we
It
don't.
is
They basically, if people want to
participants.
talk, kind of like. what
Right,
Wes
because
said.
we don't have to ask who's in a crowd. You don't have to be asked who you are in a public meeting unless
So
you're,
is there going to be any penalty for them not signing up?
unless we leave the sign up sheet on top of on top of what do you call it? But then again, people are gonna change their mind, right? Maybe through a meeting, they might hear something and then they go, hey, wait, I want to say something. They didn't sign on the sheet, or we're gonna say, oh, you can sign on the sheet first.
My,
and
my,
then come over
my
here
only
and-
concern for the town in butters, and that's why I made a comment or concern, which I appreciate the council moving it up for me, that the people that directly impacted, whether they're pro or con, should be the first ones to speak. They're immediately impacted by that. And I'd like to see preference given to town residents before
Mhm.
we have non-residents of the town, unless it's an attorney for somebody that we have some activist from another community comes in and wants to speak ahead of town residents. That's what I have a problem with.
We already changed that. But I have a question also, again, on that sign-in sheet thing. Do we only want participants who want to speak sign in?
Yeah, it should be at the front, just like Anthony. You want to speak? Sign
Who
here.
want, yeah, but it doesn't say that in here. So
This is
Who want to-
participants. I think
Who
it's
want
kind
to
of,
speak?
I kind of think participants means that you're going to participate in the meeting. by
Oh,
speaking.
okay. If you got
I
it.
think that's kind of,
Okay, no problem. I'm fine. I'm fine with that. So now you want to work on section 123.
I
starting?
say, yes, I say we move on to 120.
And
Unless there's any questions on 122. It's pretty self-explanatory. The 123, ordinance, resolutions, motions, and contracts. Are there any questions or concerns on what is written here?
Councilman, I had something to point out on 123A1, where it says no ordinance shall be prepared by the town solicitor for presentation to the town council unless ordered by a majority vote of the town council. That's not how we have been operating. I don't know if you would like to change that, but I have been requested to draft a few ordinances, and there was never a vote of the full council before I did that. I was asked, by various, councilmen, or like tonight, I worked on that street numbering ordinance with the police chief, and the animal control ordinance was another one where the council never voted to ask me to do that. I don't know if that's something you would like to have in the bylaws, or if that's something you'd like to strike out.
I think any kind of ordinance, we should all be kind of, be aware of it and or take a vote on it before we send it to you to rewrite or whatever you may need to do with it.
So if there's a department that wants, an ordinance change or something like that, so they would propose it to the council and the council would say, that's fine, move forward with it? Is that what that's pretty much what this is saying here?
Right. Well, before I would take on a project like the animal control ordinance, I would get the majority of the council's,
Sure.
blessing on, undertaking that project, rather than, working with maybe the department head and, making sure it's okay with the town manager. But there hasn't been like a formal approval by the council like that in the past.
what do you think?
Yeah, no, the only thing I was gonna say, maybe, I just, from my experience, there are cases where department heads wanna revamp, update, if updated, that directly affects their department, so they'll kind of work on that in the background and then present it to the council. And I mean, for it to get on the agenda, it goes through the council, obviously get approved, but we have a lot of old ordinances that need to be updated. So it does, you get worked on behind the scenes. And then, I don't know that every time you want the department heads to come to me and me to come to you.
Sure.
And make an agenda item, formally approve it before we go and do the legwork.
Just adds
I
time
just
to it.
wanted to.
I mean, Steve, for the most part, would reach out, earlier when, we were talking about the animal control ordinance and some of this other stuff, things that we know we need to do it, and Steve will, kind of say how big of a priority is, you know what I mean? Like, do you want us to do it now? You know what I mean? Or kind of when should we kind of do it? I mean, I don't know, this is kind of, I mean, I'm obviously open for suggestions, but I mean,
No, hey,
then again, I mean, we don't want per se, just random, Sharon saying, oh, I want this ordinance and I'm gonna work on this little ordinance and have Steve, spend all kinds of time working on it, that the town council doesn't necessarily know he's working on this ordinance and getting paid, you know what I mean, to work on it, or we're designating his time and putting most of his time into a certain direction. It's definitely not a bad idea to run the ordinances that are gonna be worked on by the council, because then the council is aware of anything. And if it's someone in the public knows about it, and, I mean, we should know about these things. I mean, that just seems pretty standard.
I kind of like your flow on it. Maybe just bring it up. Say DPW wants to, we're going to use X, Y, Z. Bring it to you, you bring it to us, and if we all feel confident, send it over to Steve. I think that's where the flow should go. So
Okay.
all of us know.
I mean, most of it will just be routine for the most part. It's just
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too. And I'm just adding my 2 cents. I know. Helpful. I like that from a billing standpoint too.
Sure, yeah.
I mean,
Right,
we need
that's
to
what
keep
I'm
a
saying.
pulse on
Sure,
what they're
yeah.
working on.
Yeah.
We certainly don't want Steve could be directed by a department head.
Right.
Go update this ordinance, spend a ton of hours.
Sure.
and his valuable time on it.
Yeah.
And then it's something that doesn't even interest the council at the time.
And it kind of allows us to prioritize some of those
Absolutely. Yeah,
things
it's
too, you know what I
something-
mean? So I think, so that language would stay then, is
Okay,
that
yeah,
kind of what
yeah.
we're?
Right.
Excellent.
Yep.
Anything else on this page? Any?
There's something on the next page.
On the next page?
Mhm.
Okay, page 16.
Number 4, voting procedures, B, section B. Says an affirmative vote of at least a majority of the members of the entire council shall be necessary to pass an ordinance. The next part of it is the part I question. But a resolution, motion, or any other proposition may be adopted by a majority voting on the issue except as otherwise specified by ordinance or state statute. I just thought it was questionable wording. It sounds gobbledygook,
Yeah,
frankly.
That sounds like a Robert's rule book. Look
I
at.
think I could give an example of what that might mean. Like, for example, tonight, the resolution to recognize the town planner was on the agenda, and if only,
That's not an ordinance, though.
this is the
Oh.
majority of the members of the entire
Okay,
town
so it's a
council, so you would have
resolution,
to have 3 to pass an ordinance, but if there were 2 members that weren't here tonight, you could pass an ordinance, a resolution recognizing a town employee like that without, with a vote of 2 out of 3,
All right,
where you wouldn't be able to do that with an
motion
ordinance.
and
Okay.
opposition isn't, it's not. a- like a-
different
like
than an
a- like a-
ordinance, okay.
So something that's more routine business rather than passing an ordinance, you could do with just a majority of the members in attendance.
Okay, so really, it's the except as otherwise specified by ordinance or state statute is something that you probably need to put in there, so I'll back off.
Correct. So if it was something like the comprehensive plan where there is a set of state laws that say, the process for that, then that would overrule the
All right.
council bylaws.
Next page? Sure. Publication and distribution?
Yes. Hardly anybody gets the newspaper anymore. And instead of publication in a newspaper, could we not just post it on the website?
Let's see why not.
Advertising
It's expensive. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
You said C?
on page 16. bottom.
And that's for ordinances, like,
It doesn't say,
Like amendments
okay,
or-
so you don't want to use the word publish, you want to use something else.
That is published. It doesn't have to be.
Posted. I just want clarification if you want that in a newspaper or say the Providence Journal, you're advertising.
well, it just says published. I mean, do they consider posting it online published too?
Good question.
So that's kind of.
That is, so anything that you put, published does not have to
In
be in
public,
printed form.
right.
I'd like to ask the solicitor from a legal point of view, if I may, is what is the legal criteria nowadays as far as publishing things in a newspaper circulation within this area, which would either be.
Compared, yeah. I think
This
what-
is, well, this section is not based on state law. This is just, if the council chooses to have, this is kind of going up, like, for example, if you were to pass a zoning ordinance amendment, all the procedures you have to follow are spelled out in state law to do that. But if you pass the street numbering ordinance, I don't think there's any requirement that you publish it anywhere. This would be just basically as a courtesy to the public to help make everyone aware of any new ordinance that goes into place. So I think if you wanted to put that just on the website, that would be fine.
Should we put a publish slash posted?
Just keep it as posted. not
Yeah.
like-
Okay,
not-
posted, okay. Okay,
Page 17.
on page 18.
Not hearing anything on page 17, page 18.
Yes, at the top, it's just where it says section 124. it should be 123. Because 124 comes after this.
Right.
So I think you meant 123. It's just the numbering got mixed up.
Right, in A right there.
Yeah.
it is one.
Well, the number will change too, because I think we just took out section 120, so we'll have to go back and fix all those numbers.
No, you're good. You're good till there.
Yeah, but
Well,
we're taking out 120, so that's gonna
Oh,
jump in numbers.
That's true. But anyway, that one at the top, the first line, and then under 4, it's also 123B and 123C. So whatever you get that number becomes, that those have to be changed. Number 2, under legal opinions, it says the town council. So I don't know why I did this, but I wrote, should it be the town council members or the town council as a whole? I don't know why I was
Right.
thinking of that. Should I use that terminology?
You mean, should all legal opinions be like, not say approved by a vote of the council to get a legal opinion, or? town
Well,
council may- yeah,
Yeah, that is a little bit vague. Does it mean any counselor or the council president or a approval vote?
You could insert the town council by a majority vote may request, and then that would make it clear that it's the council as a whole requesting it as
Because if
opposed
we're
to.
gonna approve ordinances, we're gonna agree to.
By a
let's do that.
majority
Then, I
vote.
mean, then I think we need to be consistent with how we.
Yeah.
okay, may request by majority vote, and then, oh, yeah, I did, yeah. Then I had number 4, I already told you about what, number 4. Okay, and then I have another question at the bottom, section 1.
Is it the committee of the whole one?
Yeah, why is that
I
needed?
think. Steve, you have a question on that, or
Section 126,
I think we had.
why is it needed? Question.
My copy has this whole section highlighted, section what committee of the whole. I honestly don't even know what that means.
Right, so I would get rid of
Should we
it.
just strike it?
I
Yeah,
think so.
Strike
good,
it.
good.
So the ones where they get tired towards the end of the night, so yeah, which.
Okay, so now we're on page 19,
That's
and
the last one.
I wanted to know section 128, why is that needed?
It's a suspension and amendment of the rules.
I'm just
A suspension
asking-
of bylaws. Any provision of these bylaws not governed by ordinance or law may be temporarily suspended by a vote of the majority of the town council. The vote on any such suspension shall be taken by the yes or the no and entered upon the record.
I know what usually happens, I know at political conventions and things like that, or organizations, they suspend the bylaws to be able to quickly do something or some impediment of that gets in the way of achieving a certain thing. Like there
Like a
might be,
filibuster blocker.
what?
Like a filibuster blocker. You just kind of can do whatever you.
This could be used for something as simple as taking the
Also,
agenda out of order.
What's
What?
that, Steve?
This could be something as simple as just taking the agenda out of order or
Right, true.
something simple like that.
Yep. Saying we want to move up an agenda item, we're going to suspend the rules, meaning that's
Yeah.
just as simple. I think that's.
Okay. So we're gonna keep it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's just a mechanical thing to protect
That was,
pretty much what the majority wants.
Because just.
that was it for me.
Because just imagine if somebody, we're doing an agenda item. And all of a sudden we get somebody that really pays close attention to this and all of a sudden they say, hey, you jumped over
Right.
agenda 5 when you should be on agenda 1.
right.
So yeah, I leave that in there.
Okay, all
Excellent.
right, that was mine.
All right, I think.
You know, I mean, I think like in some conventions there, they might have a roll call vote or something that's required and we move to suspend the rules because somebody's going to be elected by acclamation or some ordinance, you know, or I'm just putting these out as examples, something that can be done quickly.
Well,
Because,
that way, and like Steve said, we can kind of mumbo jump, kind
yeah,
of just
it's
kind of.
really to accelerate an action, which most people agree on.
I get it. Exactly. They're usually not controversial. It's usually just a
Most of the time.
formality to kind of move through a process that's being obstructed because of it. I mean, it's nothing, may sound nefarious, but it's, it's It's definitely not nefarious.
Okay.
All right, so with that said, I mean, that brings us to the end here of this.
The only other thing I had, and it's not really part of the bylaws, is it's kind of interesting. When we got together, we had our last meeting. You weren't sure who the sergeant at arms was.
That's because I don't think it really is a,
Yeah, I know.
No,
So
sorry,
here's my suggestion, okay? To make life, because I went around and asked, do you know who the town sergeant is? Do you know who the town sergeant is? Yeah. So there was a little bit of confusion. So what I would propose, whoever the next town council members are, and the next sergeant at arms, the moderator, town
That's what
sergeant,
it's called, not sergeant.
well, other
Okay.
close, okay.
Keep going.
So I'm saying is when the town council gets sworn in, maybe the, town welfare public, appointee, town sergeant, same maybe, so everybody can kind of see, and, Wesley's son might
agree.
get that. So I think that is just a suggestion, as we get close to November, just a thought, this kind of, instead of you getting, oh my God, I gotta stop what I'm
I
doing,
agree.
this guy comes in, and that guy.
Unfortunately, with COVID,
Yeah, that kind of.
We're out of COVID, we're done.
that has,
Let's move on.
that, but.
I know.
2 years ago, COVID was in full.
mhm, mhm.
I know, we all had to stand
We just
outside.
had to do what we had to do to get
Yeah.
them in.
No,
But
no,
yes, I
no.
agree, if we can get them all in on one night, so everybody knows who everybody is.
Yeah.
that's-
Right. I mean, because a lot of people don't know who Joe is. I know he's from Old Depot Road,
Come
but,
on.
but I'm just saying, is people put a picture together in mind. Oh, look, hey, here's this guy, that guy, or this.
Let's hope we can do that.
It's just a thought, and I think it's a good idea.
That'd be
Well,
fantastic.
I think to um, get rid of the sergeant at arms, since he really has no, that would be a charter thing.
It could be, I'd have to check the charter to see if that position's in there because Director of Public Welfare is.
Yes, when I looked, the only reference I found to the town sergeant was in the town charter, and it was just one item in a list of elected positions in the town. And then
I mean-
otherwise, there's nothing in there that says what the job entails.
Every organization I belong to, and I belong to a handful, has a sergeant at arms.
I think
Well,
what
but if he has
happens,
no duties, it's a waste of time.
well,
And most of it's
historic-
it's by tradition,
Frankly.
you know.
yeah, but
So
historically,
what?
in fact, you look at Rhode Island manuals, it will have the chief of police and name a sergeant. The town sergeant had duties, and I don't know if it's required by state law, so I think we should check on that, whether the laws of the state require every city and town to have a town sergeant, maybe not now. But,
Well,
Does
As
Richmond
long
have
as long as it's part of the charter, you can't get rid of it till you change the
yeah,
charter.
but it might be a state law that says you have to have one. I'm not sure about that.
I will do some research and find out.
Okay. That's it.
Excellent. So, so we need to come up with a date to vote on this.
So does this mean that we've gone through? All right, so Marita has started revising, made those changes so far.
Okay.
And then did you want to review before you can project out a date? And then in the meantime, we'll get an updated draft out to you and then you'll have something to look at before you.
So can we do it in that's third week in March?
So your regular council meeting in March is, for the third Monday of the month is the 21st.
Mhm.
But don't we have budget audits?
Hang on.
We have budget workshops
Yeah.
starting
Hang on,
on
hang
February
on.
28th, March 1st, March,
The budget workshops are not during the normal.
no, they're separate and apart. The only one that, none of them.
Yeah, there's nothing on the 21st.
21st,
There's nothing.
21st is this-
March.
It's just a regular
I was gonna say,
town
you're
council.
You're a day behind.
It's a regular meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
So do you want us to shoot for that date?
Yep.
Yep.
And we'll get it ahead of time more than.
Yes.
Okay.
Isn't the town moderator in action tonight at the school?
No,
Is that tonight?
March 1st.
March 1st.
March 1st. Next Tuesday.
Yeah, that's the
right?
budget workshop, yeah.
Ooh. Ed James is going to preside from Hopkinton, Hopkinton's turn. I presided at Charter meeting. A couple of times, I actually filled in for another town.
Did you say, are you talking about Charahoe?
Yeah,
Yeah.
March
It-
1st.
Is March first, because we have oh, that's right, we were gonna have our budget workshop before it, right?
So next
Okay.
Monday night, we have budget shop.
Yeah,
And then the, and then the
And then-
charter meetings after.
okay.
What time we meeting? 6?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And I think the schedule of budgetary conference before you will be done by 7:15.
Yeah,
Probably.
I moved some things around.
when are we gonna get the proposed budget?
Yeah, I'm trying my best. I'm just getting pulled in a lot of directions. So generally, I'll have it to you the week before. So I'll have it in your package, your all-week package.
Okay, so do we, so, and not to interrupt, but we've set a date, right? A date certain for this?
March
Yes.
21st.
All
Yeah,
right, so I
yeah.
can close this
To
hearing now?
vote, yes.
All right. All right, so do I have a motion to close this workshop?
I move that we close the workshop on the bylaws.
I second it.
All in favor?
Davis,
Aye.
aye.
Marvel, I.
Crest, aye.
Here, I.
And Moffat, I motion passes here. This workshop is closed.
Now we have to
Are we
wait.
still being recorded?
I'm gonna hit the stop button. Hopefully that's all right. Jeff, can I hit the stop
Knock
button?
on the wall.
I'm gonna stop.
maybe it's not.
You ready?
All right, it's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call to order the Hopkinton Town Council meeting of February 22nd, 2022 to order with a moment of silent meditation and a salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Up first, hearings. Open a hearing on proposed amendments to Chapter 17.
You want to proclamation?
The proclamation. is first.
Brian wanted to do the proclamation.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Right, so we're going to open a hearing on a proposed amendments to Chapter 17, Streets, Sidewalks, and Other Public Places of the Code of Ordinance of the Town of Hopkinton, as amended, specifically amendments to Division 4, Building Numbers and Street Names, and to add Division 5, Official Street Map, introduced and sponsored by Councilor Bob Marvel. The purpose of this proposed amendments to Division 4, Building Numbers and Street Names would provide a means of locating residential, business, and/or other structures for expedient emergency response by fire, police rescue, and other emergency services. Establish a property location that will serve as E911 locator and/or mail delivery locator. Provide property owners in town with a systemic and accurate means of identifying and locating property. Assist in proper delivery of utilities and other delivery services. The purpose of this proposed amendment to Division 5 would create an official street map establishing definitions to further the orderly layout and use of land, to stabilize the location of real property boundary lines, to ensure property legal descriptions, to facilitate adequate provisions for transportation, and to facilitate the further subdivision of larger tracts into smaller parcels of land. All right. So I'd like to start us off with maybe a little history, just like an introduction to this. I know this was worked on by town staff. So can I direct this to Sherry? Would you be speaking to it? Sure. Yeah, if you could just come up, just please state your name for the record.
Hi, Sherry Desjardins, Building and Zoning Department.
Thank you.
This has been a long time in the works. I started this back in, I think it was 2006. And then it's been a long time, Sharon. Ended up in a spot where the office, I was the only person in this, so it had to get put on the back burner. And we resurrected it with Manager McGarry as one of our goals at one point. But basically, this came into fruition through calls from our emergency responders, fire, police, Mike Rancato, Wesley Dispatch, getting in touch with me and saying, hey, we couldn't figure out how to get into this place. We know about where the house is. We couldn't find the driveway, we couldn't get in there. Respond in the manner that we're used to responding. So went through, talked to the former police chief, a lot of the officers. I actually started, it took me about a year and went through, rode with the officers, and we do maybe 2 or 3 hours a week, just marking off how many houses were marked, how many were not. I have previous emails from other responders, Hope Valley Fire District and whatnot, saying, could you please help us get something done with this, because we can't find places that are not marked. So that's basically the long
Excellent.
story short behind it.
Awesome. Thank you.
The only thing, I have two things. Because I'm sure the police, the ambulance, and the fire department, they all have GPS now, so it's actually easier technologically. I know it has nothing to do with this ordinance, but the way technology is today. The only thing that I picked up on, and I'm probably being picky, it says here on page proposed section 17/132, it says, if somebody didn't put the posting in, because I think people, the way people are so busy nowadays, they
Mhm.
might not put this on. And it says, within 10 days. You think 14? I know it's only 4 extra days, but that would be like 2 weeks. You think that'd be more practical?
Sure. Truthfully, Counselor Hurst, at this point, just to have something in there, even if it was 30 days, I'd be thrilled with that. I understand people get busy, but there's a lot of cases where we have, we've seen the same houses, no number on it, year after year after year after year.
Well, when I was collecting, going around, they helped out the Potty Hill Dam Information Committee. And I noticed that a lot of houses even have numbers on them, because I found that myself when I was doing that. And the only thing I saw is everything's got to be reflective. So if you have a house number and it's not reflective, you've got to replace that.
We'd like to see that, and I'm sure that the first responders can attest better than myself when it's 3 o'clock in the morning and your adrenaline's rushing, you're trying to get somewhere. You want to see a reflective number. You want to see it, whether you're coming north, south, east, or west. Getting back to the comment about 911, we do have enhanced 911 right now, and that's mostly GIS systems. Truthfully, those systems, I mean, you're looking at a GIS map, so you have tree cover, you have all kinds of things. That 911 system is truly only as good as our responders being able to find the access point to these properties.
Absolutely.
And I believe too that one of the primary issues that we deal with, responders deal with, is shared driveways. So there's, 5 mailboxes at the road, and you go to the driveway and you don't know which house is
Exactly.
which number. So
Exactly. You might have exactly like you said, a row of 5 mailboxes. That was part of the thinking with these other emergency responders, that we could look at this and go, okay, well, at least if we establish some type of system and said, okay, we'd like to see the numbers to the right of the mailbox, or to the right of the access point or the access drive. Even if you had, and all the responders are understanding the system, even if you had those 4 driveways and only one was marked, using that system, you could deduce which driveway belonged to which. So that was the point behind having it
So-
on the right.
So you're
Or
going to
the
have,
left, it could be either or, but at least one side.
This
of the
is
driveway.
consistent.
you'd have to have the number on your house in addition to if you have a long driveway, like some of the more remote areas of town, you'd have to have actually 2 sets of numbers, one near the road and one X on the physical structure.
Well, if your house is further, what the old ordinance actually said as well is if you're over 50 feet from the right of way, then we want to see it at the access point. If you can see it from the right of way, the house number on the house is fine. But if you're over that 50 feet, we'd like to see it at the access point.
So do you still need one on the house or?
If it's on the-
Not necessarily.
Yeah, because I know we have some, like off Woodward Road, which entered my mind, for example. You have a lot of shared driveways, and that could be confusing just in that section of town.
And we do
that's-
have some driveways, not to interrupt, we do have some driveways that are the same access, but then you have 2 or 3 houses
Yeah.
off that same driveway.
Yeah.
So there should be some type of, in those few situations, there should be some type of marking at the road saying 110 through 114. And as you actually approach the shoot offs,
Mhm.
112, 114. If a fire truck goes up one of these driveways and it's the wrong driveway,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
10,
back
15
down.
minutes turning around,
Mhm.
trying to get back out of there.
Excellent. Does anyone have any questions? I mean, I know plenty of you want to speak. I know Chief would like to speak too on this. So, good.
Go back, Counselor, what you had mentioned there, the reflective numbers. That's our goal, is to get the reflective numbers. But if a resident has a 3-inch number on both sides of their mailbox and it's visible, we're not looking to enforce this because it's visible. That's the whole idea. That anything going forward, we'd like to get reflective numbers on there. We're not trying to shove this down the public's throat. But I think everybody has to recognize the dangers of us not finding you in a timely manner. As Sherry had mentioned, it's a little more concerning to the fire trucks, the rescues, because they are so big. Once they start going down to a driveway, for them to turn around is a little difficult. But each time we're going by a mailbox that's not addressed, those are seconds that are, if it's a first responder case there, we want to find you as quickly as possible. So our goal is not to enforce, to fine you, just get you to put your numbers on there. And I know the last town council had thought that they were, the town would pay for it. I'm not sure if that's still in play. We had gone forward with the community, Hopkinton, Richmond, Carolina, all these agencies putting money in, and they all agreed on it. So I know last time there was a little bit of a concern that we were trying to force this down people's throats. That's not the case at all. If you've got numbers that are visible.
I'm just concerned about when I saw 10 days, and then I said, maybe people should have a little flexibility more than that, People work, and then wherever they go, Walmart or Home Depot, wherever they get these things, that was the thought. And then they have a, it's not that I'm trying to be obstinate, but a lot of times, 10-day, that's, 14 days would be like 2 weeks. 10 days is a little more than a week.
As Sherry said, 14 days, 30 days, whatever the town council comes up with that you think is fair to the community. It's not so that we can get money out of it. The other things I mentioned that first responders, but the other things that we handle is, you see how many UPS mail trucks are out there, FedEx. They're constantly looking for addresses, probably more so than we are. And we're handling accidents where they're backing up, they're parking where they shouldn't be parking. And a lot of it's because the numbers aren't addressed. So I see a real need for it. The one thing on here that I suggest that where it's 17-136, number 1, where it says number on structure of residence. We've got 2.5 height there. I think that really should be 3.75, because they don't have to have it on the side of the road if they're only 50 feet from the road. But that's quite a distance. So I think it'd be better off if we put 3.75 there.
Number 1 there, Chief, is what you
Yeah.
said? On the section
Number
17,
one, yeah.
136?
Mhm.
And if you drive down the road, pay attention when you leave here. You'll see that I estimated that about 70%. I checked with my officers, and they said about 70% of the people have numbers that are visible. So we're only asking for about 30% to change their viewpoint and get it labeled.
Right. Because the last thing too, somebody wants is the police to show up their house with the wrong number also. You know what I mean?
Right. And
You
it's
could be there for the wrong, God only knows what happens,
Well, and it's happened more than once where we have to make some type of notification in the middle of the night,
Right.
and 2 or 3 houses are not numbered, and we're
Right.
going there for a serious notification,
Sure,
and we're waking people up that really shouldn't have to.
right.
So, yeah.
I think it's obviously it's something that's a long time coming. If you worked on this since 2006, Sherry, I commend you, because I'm sure there was a lot went behind this. It's definitely something that needs to be done. First responders, yourself, something like that. I fully support it. Just that how we approach it to the public without the idea that, that, hey, we're forcing this on you, or that maybe somehow we can put it out through the town website, mail, or something like that. Just saying, hey, help us out to help you. Something to that effect.
when Sherry had come out with this about 3 or 4 years ago, we put out something in social media, and actually we got a pretty good response. I think we got about probably about a 10% improvement on it. So I think there's a lot of people that just don't realize that that's not numbered properly. Once we let them know, most people want to have safety for their family. So I would assume most people are going to jump on that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Mr. Caswell, did you want to speak to this at all? Did you have anything to say? I mean, you're obviously a first responder too, so you'll have some insight on it.
Councilors, Dave Caswell, Public Works, and one of the other hats that I do wear is I am in the emergency services and have been for many years. And on a personal note, my fire district covers parts of 2 towns. But it's very disheartening in the middle of the night for an infant call choking and you can't find the street address. I'm driving down the street and this is just my personal things that I've dealt with, not being able to find a house number. So fortunately for me, I've lived in this town my whole life. I know most every road in town. I have a pretty good direction as far as the numbers, the starting back in the day. God rest his soul, Chief Stanley, you remember that fire 30 years ago at the Jones farm, it's next door. Well, we have a lot of new members coming in that don't have that type of information. So again, it's those calls that are disheartening, that are true emergencies. Like the chief said, they don't want to go to somebody's house with unfortunately, a death notification to the wrong location.
Sure.
But the heart attack calls, when people want you there fast, to look for a number is a problem.
Absolutely. If I could add too, the fact that we do rely on volunteer firefighters, and to kind of go back to what Scott was talking about with GPS and being able to find a house. If you're a volunteer firefighter trying to get to a fire, I mean, you really, you know what I mean? Like you want to know where the house address is.
Well, Councilor Hurst stated GPS. My fire apparatus has GPS, but don't always believe what GPS tells you.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I'll tell you that.
I
right
realize that. My only concern is, like I brought up, I was just concerned about 10 days because we do live in a busy time and I don't want somebody to be nailed for 10 days. A couple of weeks, you tell somebody when they have time, they can go to Home Depot, Walmart and just take care of it.
Right. And I'm fine with that. I think 10 days, Scott, is probably because it's 2 business weeks. You know what I mean? I think that that's probably why it was,
I think either 14 days or more, and that's like 2 weeks. Give you a couple.
I mean, I'm amenable to
Nothing
15
wrong with
days.
Change it to 14.
What's that?
We can change it. to
I say 15. Make it 3 business days. I mean, 3 business weeks.
Prime example, when the town manager had Public Works go up to Plainfield Pike to get the COVID tests, I plugged it into my phone, GPS, and it was 4 miles off.
Right, I'm sure.
It was telling me to take a left.
GPS is
Oh, yeah.
always your friend.
Mhm.
Ask the guy who's driving a 13-1 truck that tries going under a 10-3 bridge. There you go. Doesn't work out well.
Thank you very much. Now I know Councilor Davis has some questions that she probably saw. I'm sure whoever you probably
It was
you,
Talia.
Talia.
Talia did, Gillette from the planning board, did the minutes of the planning board where they discussed this. And her questions and her proposed changes were wonderful. And I agree with them. So I would like to discuss them
Feel
if
free,
we can
yeah.
go through. So the first one, 17-132. It says subsequent to the adoption of this ordinance, it shall be the responsibility of each and every property owner. And we would take out the next 1, 2, 3, 5 words: trustee, lessee, agent, and occupant. Okay, and then the last sentence in that paragraph, it says every address number shall be displayed in such a way that they are unobstructed and legible in either direction from the traveled roadway. I think
But Sharon.
The other
al-
part is okay. I would get
also
rid
like
of
the
that.
feedback from, the people, kind of
Yeah.
the flip side of that also.
I guess I had a question, and that is, did this feedback go back to Sharon? Did you get this?
I did get.
Okay, all right.
Yes,
So
yes,
you,
absolutely.
okay, so you know what their proposed changes are.
Yes.
Okay.
Did you want to finish? Or-
I just wanted to make it
Well-
known that, we were gonna discuss this after she. brings
Yeah, I was
her
just gonna
points
say,
up.
she wanted to get rid of that last line. I think she must have said it, well, if you stop from where I stopped before, property owner, and then it says of each residential structure, business or industry to post and maintain at all times address numbers as required under this division period. So I think she probably thought you did not need this last sentence. Every address number shall be displayed in such a way that they are unobstructed and legible in either
Hi,
direction. Roadway.
this is Talia. Would you like me to weigh in on that? Hello.
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
yeah.
I did not recommend removing that last sentence, but I did recommend the changes to the sentence that preceded it so that it would read, subsequent to the adoption of this ordinance, it shall be the responsibility of each and every property owner of each residential structure, business, or industry to post and maintain at all times address numbers as required under this division.
Okay, so you're leaving the last sentence in?
Yeah,
Okay, then fine, that's fine.
I have a question for her.
sure.
Hey, Talia, I'm reading the bottom of bottom of your planning board's recommendations. Can you explain where it comes up that looks like being no more than a $25 fine if this isn't done? Am I reading this right? Or could you explain a little bit more?
So the board had some questions about how the fine would be imposed, as did I when I initially read this. My first question was, what would require a fine that would be less than $25, and how would that be metered out? So one of the things that they wanted was to kind of have a fee schedule laid out for this particular reason, because there is the ambiguity associated with not more than $25. And the other concern was that some people thought that it might be a little bit too expensive for people. I'm not going to weigh in on what the cost is for that, because we have a lot of different fees in town. We have a ton of fees that we have when we're doing planning business. So
I'm a little
I don't-
concerned that
Mhm.
fine people. I mean, you don't have this done in 15 days. We're gonna find somebody. Is this what you're saying?
This does say, it does say it's a $25 fine. I mean, it obviously has language of not more. So there
Yeah, I
is
would've
some,
gotten
there is
rid of
some
that.
whatever, I think it should just say just $25.
Right.
For each violation, right? And then it says it begins to accrue 10 days after a written notice of violation is received by the owner. And then at that end of that time, so when you pay your fine, it ceases. But if you fail to comply with this, it's every 30 days is another offense.
Right. Well, so my next question is,
So then it would be $25 each 30 days.
so who would chase this and who would enforce it?
That was a question that I had, and ultimately our planning board solicitor weighed in that the planning board didn't really have to look at that element of the ordinance, that was something that was more for you to determine as the town council.
Yeah. I have some concerns, a little sticky on that, where we're gonna find people before this isn't done in a certain amount of time. I disagree.
Well,
with
then
that.
it kind of defeats the
That's
purpose
Well,
of
I'm
having.
saying
the
is-
ordinance.
You have to.
Is the ordinance, yeah, but I mean, just who, I'd like to see something, who's gonna enforce this? Who's gonna collect the fine?
Our municipal
Who's gonna
court shall
back?
have jurisdiction over it.
Mm-hmm. That's what it says.
A little bit of a stretch.
I mean, we have zoning issues where people have junk in their front yard. They come before the court. I mean, that's slightly just as fair. I mean, in my opinion.
I guess my question would be for Lisa. Lisa, we've never done this before, so.
Well, it says right. It says in that paragraph, under 17-32, the compliance, that the Hopkinton Municipal Court will have the jurisdiction over violations of this division. So
Right.
I'm assuming that is the case. So that there would be some mechanism.
If it's something we've done in the past, okay, I mean, okay. I'm good with it.
Mhm.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.
So,
So on that, in that paragraph, we would get rid of not more than before the word 25.
subject to a fine
Oh,
of,
$25.
and then for that, like, what
And
was it?
14 days.
Right, and they had mentioned too, something about like a fee schedule. So the fee schedule is every 30 days, you get a $25 fine.
Mhm.
That's what it comes down to.
Another critical component of that was, so the board and also our planning board solicitor we all agreed that it should not necessarily be incumbent upon like a trustee, leasing agent, or occupant of a residential structure to be numbering these buildings. It should be incumbent upon the property owner to do so. So we recommended striking that language. And that also came up again in the fee schedule discussion, because instead of having any person, so we would have it say any property owner, that kind of thing. So it wouldn't be, again, incumbent upon a person who does not own the property putting the numbers up.
It's like,
Yeah.
say somebody that's renting the property.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'm on that.
I would like to say that, you know, and this might not make sense, but should we send out a notice when we send out the property tax bills about this ordinance? Because you could have somebody living in Connecticut or some other town that know about the new ordinance. So it would be incumbent on the town that when the tax bills go out on property of this new ordinance, and so that people can't proclaim ignorance, because not everybody lives in town that owns property. I'm just suggesting that.
Yeah,
I
it's an-
agree. So initially I wrote a memo to the planning board that delineated what both of these new amendments were about. And then in this one, I expressed some of the concerns that I had, and that was a question that I had, which was, how are we going to let people know about this information? Because what good is having this, which is supposed to be a way for people to find someone in an emergency, if it's not going to be implemented by people who live in town? So we discussed maybe putting it on the town website just as a notification, but I do think that probably including something with a bill or a form that a constituent would receive in the mail would be a good idea. But
I
the only
believe in that.
reason why I think that might be a problem is I don't know how much that would cost.
Right.
I want to let Sherry talk Sherry, do you have something to say? I just want to make sure that she's in the conversation and not.
Absolutely. I just wanted to touch base, and I understand where it's coming from as far as somebody that's leasing or a renter in a property. But just to make you aware, because we deal with this all the time in building and zoning, not every property is owned by Mr. and Mrs. homeowner. You do have trusts out there. You do have properties that have agents of records on those properties. And we have gone through periods where we've sent out numerous certified letters, notifications, only to have them come back to us to finally reach what basically is sometimes a financial party. Maybe it's the bank, somebody that, financial institution that hasn't fully closed. And we find a lot of times what they do is they leave Mr. and Mrs. homeowner's name on the property. So we're spinning our wheels, sending out these letters, and finally get through to this institution who says, oh, well, yeah, you better talk to Mr. and Mrs. They haven't lived there in 5 years. Right. So like I said, we're trying to put some teeth into it as far as that, just for those types of properties that do have an agent of record, that do have a lease in place. Give us a copy of the lease. Let us know who you're mailing your checks to.
I think it's an excellent idea that council first maybe send out something with the tax form that goes out every year. I know it's a little bit more legwork, a little bit more, one more step, but at least you can say, hey, it was in your tax bill. And it goes out to Mr. and Mrs. Geary who own property, but they live in Florida half of the year, like some of us residents do. So I think that'd be a good step.
So I guess my question is on the striking of this wording, does leaving it to just owner, property owner, is that problematic for?
I guess maybe that would be a question for
Mr. Seifel, did you?
Yes.
That question saying whether or not when we were talking about, I'm not sure if you had heard.
132.
Yes, I've.
In one
yes, I've-
thirty-two, did you hear? About just having property on there and taking out trustee, leasing, lease agent and occupant of each residential structure. Sherry's
Oh.
argument.
Right, it's not really a legal question, but I do think that the person that is actually in control of the property should maybe be responsible for this, and that's not always the owner. So I do see the utility in being able to, hold someone else accountable for their compliance, because the person that controls the property could be, not necessarily the owner on paper.
So what about taking occupant out? I mean, I think occupant out kind of takes that, kind of confusion away from the occupant. You know what I mean? I mean, the occupant can potentially be punished for the owner's. I just don't think that would even fly in court probably.
I'm looking for.
I just think that
Owner, trustee.
we want
lease.
to
We
work.
probably want to put lessee there rather than lease, and now that I'm looking at it.
Right.
Lessee would be the person that is leasing it.
Right. So we would have to be owner. I mean,
The lessee would be the tenant, the lessor would be the landlord.
owner and trust. Owner of record, trustee. I mean, it's got to be. Because I do agree with Sherry. I mean, that it's, there are corporations that own houses. I mean, there are banks that own houses, and they're, I guess, the owner. I mean, so it's,
You could say the owner or, other person in control of the property, and that might make it more.
yeah, something like that.
Because that's what we're going for, is who's really in control of this property and has the ability to comply and should have the responsibility to comply. And it might not be the owner who's, living in Florida and renting out the house or something.
All right.
Or, a commercial building that has, the tenant there is a business and not just, residential homeowner.
Right. I at least think occupant should be taken out. I think it shouldn't be up to the person living, if they're the renter or whatever. I think only trustee, I think agent, whatever it is, I think it's a couple extra words, and if it kind of covers some bases, I think it's worth the ink.
Yeah, we would just want to figure out exactly what to include and what to exclude from that list.
Leasee would be the person leasing, or less.
A lessor would be the term for like the landlord, and lessee would be the term for the person that is the tenant.
So then leasee would be, I would take lessor, put lessor person who's.
But the lessor would generally be the property owner.
Right. So I think that's appropriate language to have in that,
Yeah, and then
Are
take
you-
out occupant.
and take out occupant.
And you're keeping agent?
Agent is someone acting upon like a corporation, potentially, someone
Yeah.
who's representing.
All
the-
right, all right,
I'd leave that in.
all right.
Could also be someone acting on behalf of the owner,
Right.
a property manager or something like that.
Because Daddy Warbucks isn't going to come to municipal court.
All right, so the second paragraph, what are you using? Are you, instead of
I
the
think-
word person?
Property owner, or
Yeah, it's just going to
Again?
reflect whatever was up in here. Yeah. So the property owner, trustee, lessor, agent of each structure. I think we mentioned 15 days just to kind of give it, some more grace time on that. Then it's going to be a flat fee of $25, and then each violation starts after every 30 days. And then a municipal court will have jurisdiction over the violations that occur.
We decided on 14 days or 10 days.
15.
15 days. We gave you an extra one. Or we gave you an extra one.
I just think it should be more.
Yes, Brian?
Yeah, so if the council is thinking about putting this in the tax bill, there is gonna be costs incurred, and it's not cheap. I think that's the way to do it, because it's gonna reach the necessary parties. But it's gonna be like $1,600 that That's not budget. So we just gotta
Right.
factor that in. So we're gonna pull it from council contingency.
Right, and,
somewhere.
and we have to look at this, that this isn't, I mean, we're not trying to raise revenue from this. This is more of a
It's a
public
service, yeah.
safety angle, and I think.
I just thought it was worth mentioning.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely, thank you.
You know, I just think it's important for the council to remember that while we might check the town website, most people don't even check the town website, and until they get a tax bill and they have to open it. You know, I'm sure if you took a poll of people in town, have you ever gone to the town website? A lot of people said no. You know, it's not, nothing against the work that people do to put things on a website is, you know, it's not a top priority with a lot of people.
So with that being said, Chief Palmer, is there, what kind, or whoever's going to enforce this or notify it? I mean, or is this, you know what I mean? Are we gonna approve of this and then it's gonna be full on, just try to like find houses that don't have the numbers? Or is it, I mean, is there gonna be an approach to it?
I think
guess that's-
the first phase that we had thought about was to get the ones that had mailboxes that
Yeah,
that were erected. It's very easy to get those and put those on.
right.
Reflective signs there. As far as enforcement,
Yeah, I'm just saying, I mean, because all of a sudden now, I mean, people may not know this is a new, I mean, it's not, is it, I think. No, so I mean, this is on the books anyway.
It's already on the
We're just updating it, trying to get it. So this isn't new.
I
So,
mean,
so that kind of goes against.
what
what I
we've
was-
had in the past, well, for animal control, such make up pamphlets with that
Sure.
have different charges on there.
Yep.
And we could do that.
Yeah.
But the first thing we're gonna do is knock on the door and say, hey.
Right. Well, there you go. Perfect. That's it. Yeah.
we're-
Yeah. This isn't a lynch mob. You know, we're not going out and trying to,
They're not bank robbers, so
Right.
we're trying to get them to do what's good for themselves.
right.
So,
Amen.
We're gonna soft shoe it, basically.
Sure. Yeah. No, I got you. It's just, this is an enforcement tool. So that's
Right.
what's,
Yeah,
That's
I think it's, it's a good idea. I think we all agreed on getting something out in the tax bill. Kind of educate the people a bit, you go to coffee with somebody, hey, just kind of mention it. Definitely put something on the website. Some people definitely are looking into that more and more now that, with Counselor Bob's, thing, trying to get people in. So when we have budgets and stuff like that, so people are paying a little bit more attention to it, but at least educate the people a little bit more. Hey, by the way, we're kind of encouraging you to do this. I think sometimes it's easier to get more bees with honey, right?
Mm.
So, there you
The
go.
question is, do you want the police department to handle the enforcement, or do you want the zoning to handle it? I think that would be what you'd want to.
decide. Yeah. Is that something is it on here?
It's just automatically.
Letters generally in the past, letters have generally come from my office.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's usually Westerly Dispatch.
Okay,
Or one of the responding agencies that calls me up and says, hey, Charlotte,
Oh, there you go.
couldn't find this. I send out letters, and we haven't had any teeth yet, and so the letters have basically been, hey, please, could you please put a number up on your house? You really need to have a number for your own safety, blah, blah, blah. And again, as Chief said, not that we're looking to be, I don't want anything to do with being 911 police. I really, really don't.
Yeah.
But when you
understandable.
come across it, it is a chance to educate people and say, look, the past 20 years that I've been here, no house gets a CO unless I see their number posted. Then I'll issue a CO along with all the other inspections.
Yeah, I remember that when I built my house, I had that. Make sure the numbers got up on it.
Yeah, put the number up,
So the
yeah.
builder said, make sure, can you get the numbers on it? Said yes.
But yeah, so going forward, and we're not, that's not our intention, as he said, to go out looking
Sure.
for these places,
Yeah.
but there are some that are very blatant, that do not have numbers at all,
Right.
period. That can be very confusing. So I think maybe having this, you can send out that letter saying, hey,
Sure.
listen, we just adopted this new ordinance.
Yep.
We'd like to see you get your number posted.
Perfect.
Um,
All right. Yeah, no, that's.
Yeah, so it's
Thank
a-
you for that, clearing that up, Chief. I appreciate that. Oh, it's 100% a better tone. 100%. That's why I was at first, I was like, wait a minute, but hey, I learned something, and awesome. And I hope maybe everybody else learned something.
Okay.
Sure.
I wanted to go to section 17-134, number 6, about the multiple units within a structure, saying that residential units shall have a suffix letter A, B, C, D, and commercial units shall be designated with a suffix number 1, 2, 3, 4. My question is, how many buildings would have to change designation? Because apparently there's some of them that the commercial has the A's and the residential has the numbers.
Correct, and that's generally what, again, through my experience here the past 20 years, residential seems to be all the A's and B's. You have a suffix, 36A, 36B. The few commercial buildings that have gone up, if they have more than one unit in them, I have assigned them unit 1, unit 2. And there's a couple of different reasons for this. And one of the main reasons being, if a call does come in for emergency response at 26 unit 1 Main Street, right off the bat, our responders are going to know, okay, it's commercial. It's a commercial structure. Yeah, that's so-and-so's building. We know there's 4 units in there. One of them might have, they warehouse plastics or something.
Sure.
Could be something
yeah.
where if there's a fire, we might have deadly gases, we might have.
Mhm.
So that numerical gives
yeah.
them an inkling that, yep, this is commercial. So not sure what we might be encountering.
So for the most part, there would not be a lot
It
of
wouldn't affect
changes.
any existing.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I'm in
No.
total agreement with that. I think, like you were saying, for a firefighter to know they're going to commercial versus residential. Commercial could open a whole nother can of worms that they don't know about.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a great justification for that.
And like I said, to my knowledge, it would not be affecting anything. And of course, this was 2006. So it was
Yeah.
going, that was the intention. And here we are,
Yes.
almost 20 years later, and I actually did a few, like I said, the commercial buildings that have gone up, that have multiple units, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5.
Mhm. I mean, you go in a hotel room, I mean, it's numbered,
Yeah,
right?
So we're going to keep that.
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna keep it, yeah.
This is Talia. Can I comment quickly?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think, first I want to say I really appreciate hearing the background of all of the work that you've done, Sherry. It's been very enlightening. And I also want to thank the chief and Dave Caswell, because you all weighed in on things that I thought of, and that the board also discussed. I think that a lot of the board's concerns, we were all very evidence-based people, because that's what we look at when we look at these plan sets. We look at, okay, what are the details out there that allow this to either move forward or not move forward? And I think that if we had gotten some more of that data about how many houses were not in compliance, I think they might have been more comfortable with some of this language. I think a lot of their concerns arose from their concern about inconveniencing people or making life difficult for people. And I think that if they had been provided with information that showed that this wouldn't really be changing the reality that exists out there in any great extent, I think that they would have been a little bit more comfortable with some of this language. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Talia, for mentioning that. And I kind of echo that. Like I said, this is, like, if you don't ask the questions, you don't get the answers. And if you don't ask the right people the right questions, you don't get the right answers. So,
Okay.
so yeah,
All
thank you.
right.
One item that you skipped over was their 17-133, where the proposal.
Right.
Oh, never mind.
They made the change.
They were.
The E911
okay.
coordinator,
Never
they
mind.
made that change. Yeah,
Never mind.
that's why I didn't put it in. Okay, now 17-136. The chief said under number 1 that he wants 3.75 inches. on that
Reflective
last
too,
line.
right? Reflective is it?
Under 1, yeah,
Right.
under item 1,
Oh,
3.75
okay, yep,
inches.
thank you.
And then under item 3, the last word town should be changed to E911 coordinator. And I guess, Talia, you don't have any problems with that sentence, at the front of that sentence where it says no owner, occupant, lessee, tenant, or subtenant, are we leaving that in? Or are we changing it?
So the purpose of the planning board's advisory opinion is to render advice to the town council. It's ultimately up to you as a council to vote on what you think is appropriate. So you don't have to adopt any of these changes that we recommend. We would probably like it if you did, because that's why we made the recommendations, but it's not a necessity, particularly if when you're provided with new evidence about why certain things are important, you're going to be compelled to want to keep them in, when the planning board, who might not have had all of the preponderance of evidence that you do, didn't see the merit in it. So if you want to leave in the part about like the occupant, leasing, et cetera, then that's entirely up to you. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but
No, that's fine. Yeah, I would have taken it out, and just left the owner, but if you guys still want something else besides owner,
I think we should make it consistent with
yeah,
the wording we had about.
Right, right. Yeah, I think if we're gonna throw the
Previous.
word owner out there, we need to carry all.
Yeah,
Okay.
owner and leaseor,
okay, lessor,
or throw out owner and change leasee to leaseor.
owner. And should we add the trustee? So we're saying the same thing? Owner, trustee, lessor, or agent?
I mean, that's what their job is, to make sure that the requirements and the expectations are carried out.
Right, right here. Okay, so we're gonna change that to owner, trustee, lessor, or agent.
Yep.
Okay. And that's the only changes for this one.
This is number 3. This is item number 3 you're talking about.
Where was it? Yes, item number 3,
It might,
under size and color. Yeah.
I'm going to just make a recommendation here on this last line, that we just change this and make it generic and just say, no number shall be displayed.
this is Talia. You could say, no building shall display any number other than the assigned proper number
Yes.
designated by the town council.
That's exactly what I was trying to get to. So you take out who the parties are. You just say
No building.
that
There
the
you go.
numbers
Okay.
displayed have to be the address number, nothing else.
Yep.
Okay, that's fine.
That makes sense.
So it's no, you get rid of, you say no, get rid of the rest of those words, and then you come to building.
Yeah,
Good. No,
yes,
get rid of those
that's
words and
correct.
come to building.
Okay, yeah.
This is Talia. I would just be, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this, because this is something that the board discussed at length. They are very, very adamant that requested is the word that is used under all residents and other occupants are requested. There was a discussion about this issue, and there were at least 2 planning board members who said that their property would not be in compliance if these things were required. So I just wanted to express something that had been very important to the board as they had this discussion.
Is that number 5?
No, that's at the top. That's
Oh.
the.
That's at the very, very top.
Oh, okay.
before the-
The top.
But
of
I
it.
just,
17,
I didn't know if we were switching gears, so I just wanted to touch on that before we moved on to a different section, just because part of what my role here is tonight is to tell you what the planning board wanted. So here I am doing that.
Well,
So I have a question, whether or not, I mean, on the ordinance, would you use the word, request? We request you to do that? I mean, that's kind of saying pretty please, maybe? I mean, I don't know, just, I'm just
I think
thinking
that-
like along those lines. I mean,
I think that takes the teeth out of it. I mean,
yeah,
it just kind of.
Could I just by way of a suggestion, if, you're required to display your numbers in this manner, unless you could make an exception for somebody with a unique property that doesn't work for.
I'm not an attorney, so maybe I can't lay
There
on,
may be cases where it's not. I mean, if it's that obvious that it's going to be a major change, then that property or building may be kind of obvious. I mean, a little more obvious than the houses without the numbers that we're trying to find. I mean, that's just an observation or.
That's why, I think generally you want to say required when you're,
Okay.
the intent of this is to make it mandatory to get as much compliance as possible, but you could certainly try to word an exception if somebody's got a unique property that they can't strictly comply with.
But then who decides if that's a unique property? Would it be up to the building or zoning official?
yeah. Both the current and the proposed have the word requested. I'm just bringing this up because it was something that the board discussed. It wasn't a change that was made. It was just, they spent probably like half an hour talking about this very issue because I think they found merits in what you've provided for us to review, but they were concerned about, compliance. That's kind of been a running theme that they were concerned with as they were reviewing this. So I think requested would probably be better because then you wouldn't have to carve out all those exceptions for various properties because there are plenty of properties in town, Sherry can attest to this, that are bizarre and wacky shapes and maybe sloped, things like that. So I think you'd be harder to try and carve out all those different exceptions than it would be to just say requested.
But that's also assuming that those places aren't numbered already. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't already have it there.
There was some discussion too, as Talia said, there's some people that, according to this, wouldn't be in compliance. But, when you look at the big picture of this, it's not like we're asking people to put billboards outside, and we said you could, if you can't get it to the right of the driveway, put it on a boulder, put it on a tree, put it on a sign. We're just saying,
Yeah.
can we get it to the right so we can, establish this system of response with the responders who understand now, okay, the number should be posted on the right-hand side of the access point. So again, that's why that language was put in there, whether it's, displayed on a post, a fence, a wall, wherever they could put that signage up to the right of the access.
Right. I mean, you're giving them some leeway to kind of make that choice.
Absolutely,
And I think that's also
Yeah,
too.
like I said, it's not, we're talking numbers.
Right.
Like, we're not
Absolutely.
talking a huge-
And again, that's where requested comes in.
Right. Versus required, and I understand but as, Attorney Saipol said, again, it's an ordinance that we're trying to establish here, so for the purpose of the ordinance, I feel as though it should be required versus requested.
Well, it's required that you have a number, but it's requested that you potentially use a telephone. I mean, use something else other than whatever it is, kind of. You know what I mean? I mean, it has to. The word require it has to be. I mean, I'm not. I mean,
That was the conclusion the board came to ultimately.
yeah.
As well, Steve, yeah.
Do we potentially leave it as required, but then add a line that says, or add unless
I would say this.
approved by the.
I would almost say this, that if they do get a notice for some, and this is just thinking on a road that, and it's odd. I don't know if, if language in here can say, unless the zoning official, it kind of decides anyway, like I mean, you may know, like, it's pretty unfair to give the guy the zoning, or, you know what I mean? So we may say municipal court, like, this is gone. You know what I mean? Like this has been satisfied. We've hashed it out. And again, how many times, like you said, are you going to get it sent into you? You know what I mean? And
Right.
because we're not hunting them down. We're not driving down every street looking for them. It's going to be on a case by case. If, if someone, if this officer goes to a house and doesn't see the number, that kind of stuff, or.
Sure. And I'm sure there are absolutely cases where, due to the unique characteristics of the land,
Right.
You might have a hill that drops.
I don't
down
find
the
it- I
right
mean-
side of the driveway.
Yeah. 2 of our board members had that exact problem.
But there's got to be something that can be established. you
Right,
know,
something.
And
Mhm.
case by case basis.
So what's the problem with saying required unless prior approval from the zoning?
I like required.
I like it,
Yeah.
and let it go.
Yeah, yeah, and let
So
it go.
just leave it? Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I'm not arguing for requested, I'm arguing for, I think required is the, in an ordinance, it should say that. It should say
Okay.
requested.
You would just want to amend the ordinance as when
Where it
you're
says
going to,
requested.
yeah, when you're going to be advertising it, just because that would be a change to it. But
And so
I
we need
think,
to change that where it is already in here previously and not, it's not being amended to say that it actually says it in there. Is that what you're saying, Talia?
I'm saying that right now in both the current version and the proposed version that was provided to us by Mr. Marvel, it says requested. So you
Okay.
would want to change it when you're going to, so like when you advertise this and you put
Oh, yeah.
forth, I think you understand what I'm saying. Okay.
It needs to say what we mean is what it
Yeah,
says, which is,
Yes.
right.
In the draft, okay, in the draft, it was listed as required.
Yes.
Yes.
My copy does also.
Yes,
have that.
okay.
We'll double check that though. We'll make sure that it says required.
Oh, it does. You're right. You're correct. I'm incorrect. I apologize.
You wanna go?
Was there anything
I have something in the next one, Division 5, but do we have to do anything? with
Well, there's-
Division 4
there's-
Before we go to Division 5?
we're talking about both amendments in the same hearing, right? So
Okay.
So we're talking about both and then we can, yeah, it's all together. And then we'll
Okay.
Just,
So my only other change is section 17-142. And at the end of that, where it says countersigned by the town clerk. Okay. I liked the addition that planning had, which says the town council shall vote on additions to the official street map after said streets have been subject to the land development and/or subdivision process and have been approved by the planning board. Every year, the town council will confer with the requisite departments, boards, and commissions to compile a list of newly created streets for inclusion in the official street map. Just wanted to add that at the end of section 17-142.
Sherry, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't have any objection to that. There is a process, and I do actually have a form that will usually go, Jim has a copy of that street numbering form that we use that goes to planning when a new subdivision is being proposed and whatnot. And normally they'll have me fill it out and it goes over to planning. And we try to address all those, the street names. I take a look at them compared to what we have and how the numbering would be.
Excellent, thank you.
And
does anyone want to speak to this mapping thing or Lisa?
If you're done with the sections that you,
one more, section 17-147, I want the
that's what I
blue-
have a question on.
Blue Pond Road should be Blue Pond Trail. And I guess I have to say Pine Woods Drive.
So that's on your official map.
Should be Pine Woods Road
Woods with an S at the
with
end?
an
of it?
S and then road instead of Pine Woods Drive.
So my question pertains to 17-47, list of uncertified roads or sections of roads in the town. The previous form that was before you had the previous town's list of uncertified roads and a description of them. I received the list of private roads from Jeff, and he provided them to me, and all I did was strike and insert the private roads. So it says the following is a list of roadways and their approximate locations. There are no approximate locations on there, so I think we should strike that, or that would have to be done. Would think that would be a daunting task.
So
Okay, so take and their proper and our approximate locations out.
Yep.
Those words out.
If I could, just an overall comment on the street mapping ordinance or the official street map. Unlike the street numbering ordinance we were discussing, a lot of this is just word for word copied and pasted out of the state statutes. There's an act in the state laws that authorizes towns to adopt an official street map, and this is, for the most part, word for word what the statutes say. So we should probably, before deciding on any changes to this, I would want to go take just a second look at the statutes that we're starting with here and make sure we're not doing anything that conflicts with the state law. So before with a meeting where the council would vote, I'd probably just want to go through like the final draft and compare it to the statutes and make sure that's okay. But that,
so would we just continue with the hearing, or would we set a date and then kind of catch up on it and then?
well, I think if you set a date to vote, I could do that work in the meantime, and I would get, Lisa would put the version, in the council packet for that meeting. So I think we have time to get that done. I just wanted to point out that distinction where the street numbering ordinance was really the town's original ordinance just being updated, where this is new and it's based on state law.
Excellent.
So I don't want us to accidentally put a amendment in here that's different than what the state's requirements are.
So you want us to continue the hearing or not?
I think that, in between, we could, if you just set a date to, for this to be put up for a vote, I think I could do that work before then. I don't think we need to delay the vote.
It's just that one section.
Yeah, because you could still amend it at the meeting.
Yeah, we can
where
still
you
amend.
would be voting.
It's not like it's.
In the
Councilor
private,
Marvel, question.
the private roads are listed, are shown on the map, are they not?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so
That's
if,
for their location.
if the state law allows, we can just remove that, and if anyone is looking for a private road, they can.
Right.
You can see it on the map.
Well, I mean, the history of private roads is that some people have the attitude that if they pay taxes, they should have their roads plowed, but private roads are private roads specifically because of either choice or they have to meet certain requirements to be brought into the town highway system. So you just can't say, I want the town to take it over. They actually have to have certain things done. Because I remember that case, I think it was Carroll Drive, I could be wrong, years ago, the site, but I remember that because certain standards have to be met for a road to be brought into the town road system.
So my question, the reason I was wanting to ask is we didn't cover on the planning board's memo here. We didn't cover the first one here, which was the purpose, 17-131. They were looking to maintain the original language for the purpose. And I read through this, and I think that the proposed language adds clarity and better understanding. So I guess I was going to ask Talia if she had some perspective as to why they wanted the existing purpose statement as opposed to something that's a little bit broken out and a little more clear to me anyway.
The way that they explained it is that they just thought that it was fine the way that it was, and they didn't think it needed to be enumerated further. But again, as I said earlier, after hearing all of the testimony from various town officials, I think that it might be beneficial. But again, the board didn't feel that it was important. They didn't think it was necessary.
Thank
I
you.
will just echo Mr. Marvel's comments that I think, and because I've gone on and read so many ordinances, town ordinances, and just and read so much that the one thing that lacks in a lot of them is clarity and kind of like speaking to specifics, kind of like breaking it down into normal speak. And I think this kind of just bullet points it out there like, hey, this is why we're doing it, not because of some jargon that, they might not want to understand. So I just think that it brings clarity, it brings purpose to it. I mean, definitely brings purpose to it. And so I definitely support it being that way. That's why I didn't bring that issue back up. I just, maybe just assume that everybody was on board with it being there.
I'm on board with you.
Yeah. So.
That's totally fine. Again, you don't have to agree with the planning board's
Yeah,
recommendation.
no, understood. But it's also nice to hear both sides and kind of how things, like you said, with a little more information, sometimes you can gain a better perspective.
Yeah, and I appreciate the perspective.
Yeah,
from-
for sure.
From you guys. Thank you, Ted.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, Jim,
Mr. Chairman, if I could just,
you
add,
sure can.
I'm not sure if Talia might have covered this in her report from the planning board or not, but when I was reading this draft this afternoon, I'm looking at section 17-145, and it talks about regulation of buildings in the bed of map streets. Should that be clarified a little bit? Are we talking about the right of way of a street? What exactly do we mean by the bed of a street? And also further in that paragraph, when would you actually want to issue a building permit for a building in the bed of a town road? I don't.
Sure. I could maybe let Steve might be able to answer that, but I just.
Well, what I
mean, this
can,
is copy and pasted for the most part from.
this
state laws.
is Rhode Island General Laws, section 45-23.1-3, and this is basically what the statute says. I don't believe that there was a definition exactly for what the bed of a street is in the state law. So that is a gap that is not filled in here for us by the General Assembly. I'm not.
I'm glad you brought that up, Jim, because that was something that we had discussed in the planning office.
Bed in the middle of the street? I'm sorry. I was thinking out loud. Yeah.
I
was
don't know
saying,
if Mr. Caswell is still
building
there, if
is
he
set
might
up-
know what exactly that term means from
I just don't know when this would be applicable.
in Hopkinton.
And Steve may know the state law much better than I do, but I would venture to say that there's probably a lot of really old material embedded in state laws that have never been amended over the years. And I don't know how far back this term goes, bed of a map street, but again, as I read the paragraph, even further on, it says that whenever the bed of a map street is located on one or more parcels. So in other words, are we now saying that we have a bed of a street on a privately owned parcel? I mean, I just don't, this whole paragraph, to me, is going to lead to some questions on the part of some people, and I wouldn't know how to answer them. I mean, when I think of a bed of a street, I think of a right of way.
Well, I think the intent here is that if you have a street that is mapped out for future development, that you wouldn't ever want to allow someone to go and build where the street should be. But beyond that, it's almost something where I'd turn to Jim or to Dave Caswell and ask, from your perspective as the people that actually maintain the roads and give out the permits, how you would interpret this.
We thought maybe that it had to do with paper streets along what you were just saying,
I
Steve.
think that's probably what the intent is you've got a street laid out where, future development could happen, and you don't want to then go give somebody a building permit to put a house where the street is supposed to be.
I know of at least one that we do have in town right now, that is a paper street. There are probably others. Sherry might be able to weigh in on that better than I would. I know about one because it's been the subject of some questions from members of the public.
Yeah, I mean, this is almost more of a question for maybe a surveyor or an engineer than it is for myself.
Exactly. Even when you're talking about a paper street, what exactly is a paper street? A street that just hasn't been built yet?
Well, we do have a definition, I believe, for paper street.
So obviously, you're not gonna put a building in something where a street needs to be.
Right.
A lot of times, you're talking about a paper street. I think I know what Talia is talking about. It's a
Mhm.
street that is there to justify two lots that are at the
Right.
end of it. If you don't have that public road, you don't have those two lots.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I wrote, so when I was preparing for the planning board meeting where we were going to be discussing this, I actually wrote a memo to the board that is separate and distinct from the one that I provided to you, the town council. And that was something that I was curious about. I think ultimately, and Steve, you'll probably agree that maybe that should be investigated a little bit more before it's put into this ordinance or not put into this ordinance.
Well, whether it's in the ordinance or not, it's still part of the state law, and it would
Mhm.
still probably control in any situation where one of these issues came up.
Mhm.
But I know, for example, a paper street could happen if somebody built a subdivision and, drew on their map that the road might continue in the future.
Mhm.
And that could lead to what might be a paper street. It exists on the map, but no one has built anything down that way or turned it into a street yet. I have seen that situation come up.
okay, I just thought this probably needs.
Yeah,
some
no, I mean,
clarification,
it's-
That's all.
So, I mean, even discussing it, like Steve said, it's state law. Maybe it should be in there. So, but I'd like to know more about it though, now that it's been brought to my attention. I mean, what is it exactly? What are we specifically stating here?
Well, when I think of a road bed, and Dave can, weigh in on this. When I think of a road bed, I think of the sub base for the gravel pavement.
Sure.
That
Yeah.
to me is a road bed as opposed to a right of way, which right of ways are generally wider than the actual road bed.
Right. Mhm.
Could be 50 feet wide.
Right.
Road bed could be 24, 26.
Sorry.
My understanding with this section was that it would really more apply in the case of a paper street, where like an area was reserved for the possibility of a future street being put there. And then what you would do if somebody said, well, I don't want that to be a street anymore. I want to put my building there now. And I think that's where this would come into play. But I would really I'd almost want to ask a surveyor before I'd want to say I'm certainly not the authority on
Right.
that.
So we'll revisit that at the next meeting. We'll kind of come back and just get us an answer to it, And then,
Thank you, Jim.
thank you, Jim.
I know exactly what Tally is talking about. Hannah Lane, I just noticed that is not on this street map. That is much closer to coming to fruition. And that was one of the questions that, it just got me thinking because this is it's a road that's going to be going off Main Street over near the Dunkin' Donuts area. It was kind of an oddball thing that got approved back in 2005 or 2006.
We're talking about where?
Hannah Lane,
Okay.
off of Main Street, almost at the Dunkin' Donuts.
Okay.
And it's what is going
Oh,
to
I know where you're talking
public
about.
road.
Yeah.
Yes, it was this oddball hammerhead that was
Lot.
approved with 2 lots. So that is in the process. We're going to be getting, we had the owner of the property get a bond for the road that we'll be getting over to you. That's not included in the list, so we could probably amend this list to include Hannah Lane on the official street map. And I understand sort of what I think what Talia was trying to get at too, with some of these other roads that we know Hannah Lane is going in. That's a for sure. That's going to happen. Some of the other roads, and I didn't know if it confused more than anything else. The map 32 that we have of our plat maps. That Tim, was the old Brushy Brook? Yes, that was approved. I don't know where that stands now, if that's going to go in, but there are actually no roads there at this point. It's raw land. The official roadmap for the town of Hopkinton, we're going to be updating this. This is going to be a work in progress that the council will periodically look at and update. At what point do you include roads on the official street map? Once they're in, once they've been approved by DPW? I guess that was just kind of a question that I had in my own head. At what point do you include them on that official street map?
I think
Oh.
Jim may have a,
Yeah, I would say when the town council accepts the road.
Perfect.
Which would be after DPW inspects it, after the planning board approves it.
Yep.
Then the council.
excellent. Thank you, Jim.
What about when it's private?
Well, we're not accepting it are we recognizing it?
Yeah.
Is that kind of,
These are private roads
Right.
on this line.
No, that's gonna be
They're talking about if someone wanted to convert a private road into a public road?
That's a very good point that Lisa brought up, because in the case of residential compounds, those roadways never become public. So in that case, a private road should be put on when when it's recorded in the land evidence records, because it's a private road.
Right.
Not public.
right. So how should we handle that? What do or you're asking us how we should handle that? Maybe you have a suggestion. Thank you. Just wait on me.
Yeah. So did we pick a date?
So are we gonna set a date certain to make a decision?
Should we continue the hearing and then?
I don't think
No.
we need to
No.
continue the hearing.
No.
I think we can close the hearing. Mr. Seifel is going to answer some questions for us, come with some information, and we can amend anything at that
Well,
time.
just as soon as the, any changes that were discussed tonight are incorporated in, then I can take one last look at it and make sure we're still okay as far as the state law goes.
Excellent.
So
Is
what
the,
time is it? When's the other one? Lisa, when is the first thing that we're gonna vote on? What date do we pick?
So to give enough time to incorporate and study what was discussed this evening,
It's the third,
I
the
would want to make
21st.
sure that I confer with everybody.
Sure,
here that
yeah.
We've got everything. So I would think maybe April 4th
Okay,
for
Fine with that.
consider for adoption. That would give time for us to
okay.
all sit down, make
Yep.
changes, address the maps, and of course, those few that you have mentioned.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's fine.
Yep,
I mean,
that's
Give
fine.
Steve Seifel a chance to review. We have a lot coming up.
excellent. That sounds great. April 4th.
April 4th.
Excellent. So do I make a motion to close the hearing? Yes. Do I have a motion to close the hearing to a date certain?
I'll move that we close the hearing and have a date certain of April 4th.
April 4th.
Second.
With the second, any discussion? No discussion. All in favor?
Rest aye.
Marvel, I.
Davis, I.
Gary, I.
And Moffat, aye. Motion passes.
Much thanks to all involved with this.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Okay. Up next, we have a consent agenda, approved town council meeting minutes of February 7th. Accept the following monthly financial / activity report from the town clerk. Do I have
I'd like to pull the council minutes of the last meeting, please.
You have amendments to be made?
Not at all. I didn't agree with the way the last council meeting was run, and I'm going to vote against it. Thank you.
All right. Do I have so then I would just be making a motion to accept the monthly, is that it? Or Yeah, do I have a motion to accept the monthly financial / activity report from the town clerk?
I'll move that we accept the monthly financial activity report from the town
Second.
clerk.
With a second, all in favor?
First, I,
Marvel, I.
Davis, I.
Gary, I.
And Moffat, aye. Motion passes. Up next is the manager's report.
Good evening, council. As you're all aware, our town planner, Jim Lampier, will be retiring at the end of the week after 15 years of service. And I just wanted to say a couple words.
Absolutely, please do.
Do a proclamation. So I'll keep it short, but I think it's due that we honor Jim tonight. When I first met Jim in 2014, I immediately noticed that he was a very knowledgeable man. But most importantly, he always put the town first. He was a dedicated planner, and his source of institutional knowledge will be greatly missed by the town. He's taught us many things over the years. As he's worked diligently to make improvements on town operations, he was always steadfast on all his projects. But I, for one, will always remember his work on CDBG, the numerous state and federal grants, as well as his work on Langworthy Field. I think I speak for all the town when I say that it's been an honor and a pleasure to work with Jim, and that we wish him the best in his well-deserved retirement. Congratulations on your retirement, Jim, and thank you for your 15 years of dedicated service to the town of Hopkinton. And I'd also like to know, please don't lose your cell phone number or change it by any means, because I'll be in touch. But thank you. And Lisa.
Did the town council want me to read this?
Yes, please.
This is a proclamation in honor of James Lampier. Be it hereby known to all that Hopkinton Town Council wishes to publicly recognize the retirement of Town Planner Jim Lampier after 14 years of service with the town of Hopkinton. Whereas James Lampier has been employed by the town of Hopkinton as planner since October 2007. And whereas James Lampier has faithfully and conscientiously served the town of Hopkinton and its citizens for over 14 years, during which period of time numerous projects were initiated through his leadership, which will continue to have a revitalization and growing impact on the town of Hopkinton. And whereas the town of Hopkinton has benefited greatly because of the dedication and hard work of James Lampier, who has assisted the town in obtaining numerous grant awards and showing genuine commitment to the town, to the residents of the town of Hopkinton. And whereas one characteristic that distinguishes James Lampier's career as a public servant is his enormous capacity for hard work. And whereas James Lampier has earned the respect and admiration of everyone from whom he has come into contact by his wholehearted and dedicated participation in many civic projects. And whereas James Lampier has been the union steward / representative for the Rhode Island Council 94, AFS-CME, AFL-CIO, Local Union 3163 since 2018. Now therefore be it resolved that the Hopkinton Town Council adopts this resolution in recognition of James Linfield's faithful and valuable contribution to this town of Hopkinton, and further extends its best wishes for a long and happy and productive retirement. And be it further resolved that this proclamation be presented to James Lampier.
Mr. President, I move adoption of that resolution.
I second.
All in favor?
First, I,
Marvel, I.
Davis, I.
Gary, I.
And Moffat, aye. Motion passes. Jim, thank you very much. You absolutely, please do.
Way back when I was in high school, my parents and I used to come down Route 3, and we'd go to the Chinese restaurant in Westwood, China Village. And that's way back when the enchanted forest was still enchanted, and we passed by the Lucky House used to be the Lantern Glow. Okay, remember that? And one thing coming from Cranston, like I grew up in, I really marveled at Crandall Field. When we passed that and we went through Ashaway, we went through Hope Valley as well. That's very nice as well. But the field of Crandall Field just really put me in awe. That expanse of land. And at that time, I never knew how well I was going to get to know the town of Hopkinton. I never had an idea. back in high school. But so if I could give a little bit of advice to younger people just starting out, I would say, dream big, work hard, study hard, follow your passion, develop your talents, and I think you're going to have a great life. Okay. I would say love your fellow human beings, help others whenever you get the opportunity to, and you're going to have a wonderful, fulfilled life. So I just want to go back and say thanks to a few people, if I could. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Bill DeLibero, who hired me back in 2007. He was a great manager. I only worked for him for a year and a half, but he was very good. I worked for Mr. Bill McGarry for about 11 years. He was a fine man of good character, was always there to support me whenever I asked him for it. And then now I'm working with Mr. Rosso, and I can say that you made an excellent choice in a manager. He is a man of vision. He has plans for the Crandall Field area that I'm really excited about. And so I worked for 3 great managers. I came into the planning department, and there was a wonderful lady, Linda St. Amour, who took me under her wing, showed me the ropes, everything they were working on at the time. Very intelligent lady, master's degree, former school teacher. Linda left in 2015. Along came Sean Henry, young gentleman, very well educated, master's degree in public administration. Worked with him very well. Right now, you can see Talia. I work with a very, very well-educated individual in Talia Gillette. Again, master's degree in public administration from a prestigious university. And you can see the fine job that she did here tonight in working with the planning board and presenting the material. So without people like that, around me, I wouldn't have been able to do anything. And it even goes beyond the planning department. You have Dave Caswell here, Tim Teff before him, Doug Reese. We have a public works department that is very resourceful. They can do almost anything. Many people have individual talents that are brought to bear, and there is very little that they can't tackle when they're asked to. Police department, I came in under Chief Scunzio. Now we have Chief Palmer. Both of those gentlemen know how to police a community appropriately. One thing that the chief said, I never forgot, he was up here one night explaining something to a council, and he said, everybody in town is wonderful. It's just, I run into some people just maybe having one bad day. And that's exactly the way you want to look at things. And so he's fine. And to my right here, we have, a town clerk that's out of this world. I know you've only worked with her for a short period of time, but I'm sure you've realized that Lisa is absolutely the tops, doesn't make any mistakes. And the people that she works, people with her in her department are equally as competent. So in short, I just want to say to the people of the town that I personally have been, gratified to be a part of this team for so many years. I've enjoyed conversing with all the public out there on the phone about many different issues. And I love them all. And I'll miss them. But again, it was just a dream for me to be here. And anytime anybody needs any help or a question about something, feel free to give me a call. I'll always be there for you. And with that, I say goodbye and thank you and good luck to you folks as you go forward.
Thank you so much, Jim. All right, up next under old business, update received from Representative Brian Patrick Kennedy regarding improvements made by National Grid in Tamaquag vicinity as reported by the Public Utilities Commission, including new fuses and tree clearing efforts being implemented in a resolving power outage problems. I have made Mr. Kennedy a panelist. Mr. Kennedy, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. So what I've been trying to do over the last couple of months as I've been getting correspondence in from the Division of Public Utilities and Carriers, the Public Utilities Commission, spokespeople from those particular departments, been trying to forward that on to the town council, the town clerk, and the town manager, keep you as informed as possible. As you know, there were 3 fuses that were installed along the grid, one on Maxon Hill, one down near Frontier Road, and another one along Collins Road. And the purpose behind all this was if one section of that particular part of the grid were to go out, as long as the other fuses stayed on, the individuals along that stretch would not lose power. And so far, and we've had some pretty good sized windstorms from the blizzard a couple of weeks ago and all. Overall, while there may have been some power lost in some of those places, hopefully there's been a big improvement. The latest information that came in from Cynthia Wilson Frias is that there will be targeted work done between now and early April to do some more trimming of the lines along the streets around the Tamaqua area. And I noticed in the letter that I had forwarded just last week, they also announced that they have a new targeted area in the town of Hopkinton, which I was not aware of until I read the letter. That happens to be on Woodville Road in Hopkinton. So they noticed that or the company is targeting the Woodville Road area as one of 3 areas for pockets of poor performance work in FY 2022. Specifically, they're going to address additional dead trees adjacent to the conductor. So going forward, I think we've got the attention of National Grid and the PUC and the divisions of public utilities and carriers. Going forward, I think that they recognize that there continue to be issues in the town of Hopkinton, but hopefully by continued maintenance of the tree work along this area and the installation of these fuses, hopefully we're going to finally have this issue under control and manage to keep the lights on more than having them going off on a frequent basis. I would tell the town council there is going to be a proceeding at some point in time moving forward regarding National Grid and their application to sell their territory in the state of Rhode Island to the utility out of Pennsylvania. Right now, I know the Attorney General has concerns about it and the ability of having backup service employees in this area if there's a major outage. But as of right now, it looks like there's perhaps an agreement that's going to be coming into play at some point between National Grid and the new company, which would be able to move workers around from some of the other territories that National Grid has. But I would also encourage the town council, if you have a concern about that, to weigh in on it with the Attorney General's office in Providence to let them know if you think that is important enough to let them know about the town's concerns. I'm glad to see National Grid finally getting a little bit more serious about things down here, because unfortunately, I think they let a lot of the maintenance of the grid somewhat become stagnant over the last several years. I heard, 5 or 6 years ago when we had a member who has since passed on, Patrick Shanley from South Kingstown, talk about some of the old equipment that's on the grid. So there's no question there has to be more of an effort or a maintenance of effort. We hear that word so many times when it comes to schools. Narragansett or National Grid has to make more of a maintenance of effort to make sure this grid is in proper condition.
I'd like to say something.
Sure. Scott Billhurst?
I just want the town to know my involvement in this. I went to Public Utilities Commission, I talked to a couple of people, and this was, a few months ago. And they told me about the 3 fuses that they plan to do. Also, Paul Stasiak from National Grid contacted me, and he wanted to meet. And I like to note Dave Caswell was present at the meeting at the Crandall House. So the council has been involved in this issue, specifically me, and also Dave Caswell showed up, and we had a few people at the Crandall House dining room about this issue and the tree situation and things of that nature. So I have worked on this issue, and I just want people to know that there has been council involvement in this. Thank you. And as you know, it was on the agenda a few months ago. Thank you.
Are there any questions or anything for Representative Kennedy?
No, thank you very much,
All right.
Representative.
Not hearing any. Thank you very much for the update, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, and one other thing, although that's probably a separate issue, I have also shared the information as far as upcoming road work. Council President was very concerned about the Ashaway River Bridge. So I am happy to share with the town council and the community the fact that that bridge will be milled during the spring season, and a new coat of pavement will be applied to it in anticipation that in 2025, we have some major road construction that'll be taking effect all around the Ashaway section of town. And DOT is going to have a major contract going out, and it's going to inconvenience people for a while, but hopefully by the end of 2025, 2026, people will have much nicer roads going forward. But I shared the information with the council president, with the town clerk, as well as the town manager to let you know what the status is of the upcoming projects.
Excellent. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Up next on the agenda, under new business, discuss, consider, and possibly vote to adopt the proposed townwide fiscal year 2022-23 annual goals and fiscal year 2024 to 26 multi-year goals.
Good evening, council. As you're aware, we do this an annual routine. It's part of our budget process. This year, I found it particularly important because of some of the federal funds that have been made available to the town. So I've spent an extra amount of time with the department heads and going through and discussing their needs and prioritizing some of the issues in town or updates and upgrades that we could possibly make. So we put this together collectively, all the department heads and myself. And, it's the usual process. I'd like to point out that these are goals. So by approving this, it by no means indicates that it's approved and that it's funded. We still have to go through the budget process or again, approval by the council before any of these projects actually.
It's just an approval necessarily. We're just approving your goals, like
Exactly.
we approve
Yep,
of
just-
the direction that you've gone in.
Just making you aware of the things that we found amongst the department heads and myself that we think need to be addressed and that we'd like to see some attention to in the near future.
I don't have a problem approving these, but I do think the council, as an elected body, should have also their own set of goals, because we run an election, things that we want to accomplish. And I think it'd be good, especially we're going to be working on our budget, what our goals are as council members and not just town employees. It seems, I think the council or successive councils need to be more cognizant of carrying forward their ideas that they was elected on. And that's just a general observation. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. So we've all seen the goals. It was in our packet. So if is there a motion to accept these goals?
Mr.
Both the
President,
fiscal year 2022, 23 and 24, 25 multi-year goals.
I will make a motion these goals be adopted, the proposed townwide fiscal year 2022-23 annual goals and the fiscal year 2024-26 multi-year goals.
Excellent. Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
First, I.
Marvel, I.
Davis, I.
Gary, I.
In Moffat, aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Council.
Up next, under new business, number 2, we have the Wild and Scenic River Stewardship Council discussion on low impact development, municipal assessment from Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. A, discuss and consider and possibly vote to approve any assistance required to complete the survey. At this moment here, I will turn the floor over to Chip, and then Chip can go in any direction he'd like with this conversation.
Okay.
Chip, can you hear? Excellent.
I can hear you. So first, I'd just like to thank the council for providing us, the Stewardship Council, the time to, just to tell you about this opportunity and for your consideration on it. As I mentioned, so this came up from an email that I sent the town council that was about actually a low impact development municipal assessment that will potentially be required by Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. And really more importantly for the town, that the Stewardship Council working with the Rhode Island Office of Non-Point Education for Municipal Officials are actually looking to support the town and actually do the effort for the town. So I don't want to steal anyone's thunder. I just want to say that, so I'm here, myself and David Augustin are here as the Hopkinton representatives on the Wood Pawcatuck Stewardship, Wild and Scenic Stewardship Council. Cassie Donnelly is here as the coordinator for that Stewardship Council. And we also have a guest tonight that I really appreciate her time and effort, Lorraine Gilbert, as I mentioned, who is from the Rhode Island Non-Point Education for Municipal Officials. I did notice that she's not actually, I think she wasn't made a panelist. So if you wouldn't mind making her a panelist, if that's possible,
All set.
I'd like to turn it over to her so that she can give you guys a brief overview of what this is about and why it's worth doing. And then Cassie's here and I'm here and David are here if you have any questions about what the Stewardship Council can do to actually, help take advantage of this opportunity. So thank you, Lorraine, for being here.
Great, thank you, Chip. And thank you to the members of the Town Council for having us here tonight to talk about the low impact development assessment.
Just 1 second, Lorraine. Could you just state your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Lorraine Joubert. I oversee the URI Cooperative Extension Program known as Non-Point Education for Municipal Officials, or NEMO for short. We provide training and technical assistance for towns to protect drinking water quality and manage stormwater runoff.
So thank you.
And tonight I'd like to discuss how the low impact development municipal self-assessment will work when we begin this effort with the town. But first of all, I'd like to review what is low impact development and the municipal assessment, what is the LID assessment process that we'll be following, and what the benefits are to the town. So low impact development is the current approach to managing stormwater runoff required by DEM. It emphasizes better site design to protect natural areas and limit site disturbance and reduce the amount of pavement and other impervious surface to the maximum extent possible. This has been the standard since 2010, but still today, DEM reports that the number of stormwater permit applications without LID exceeds those applications with proper LID design. The problem is local ordinances may either prevent the use of LID designs or favor conventional practices. Even though developers are required to apply LID, DEM does not have the authority to override site designs approved by the town, and that's typically approved at the master plan level. So DEM can only, at that point, they can only ensure that the design of the stormwater treatment systems meets the minimum standards to handle the increased runoff. So they're just looking at the BMP design not the overall design of the site. So to help towns apply lid, DEM in our office developed the municipal lid assessment so towns could have a systematic way to compare their development rules with nationally recognized benchmark standards that better protect water quality. The heart of the assessment is a series of questions about the town's subdivision regulations, zoning standards, and other ordinances that we would work through the assessment. Working through the assessment allows an in-depth review of the current standards, and it identifies which lead techniques are in place and which standards could be improved. So it's very systematic, and it's based on national standards adopted by leading states elsewhere, as well as Rhode Island. So how will this process work? First of all, we're thankful to the Wild and Scenic Rivers Stewardship Council for funding a graduate student that can help with this assessment. The student will complete the assessment as a first draft under my supervision, followed by review by the town planner, so we're minimizing effort by town staff. The results will include the completed assessment as a first draft, and that will be based on subdivision, zoning, and other ordinances. The student will also make preliminary recommendations for standards to be updated, and overall results will be summarized. And then there'll be a meeting with the planning board to present the summary results. The planner and other staff would also have an opportunity to review and comment at that point too, or as soon as the first draft is completed. Then the next step is where the planning board has to put in some effort. They need to review the results and select priorities for change, like which ordinances and which subdivision regulations do we change first. And ideally, this would be done with input from other town staff, such as Public Works and Engineering, Public Safety, and building officials. If you have a technical review committee, their involvement would be ideal, since they are, they're familiar with new development issues. And then finally, the town would have to establish a schedule for implementing any changes, identify if comp plan updates are needed, and the usual process of drafting updates and adopting them with public review. So why should the town do all this? What are the benefits? Well, there are several reasons why this is so critical for the town and the watershed. Stormwater runoff is the #1 source of pollution to surface waters nationally and in Rhode Island, and the main reason why so many Rhode Island waters are not safe for fishing and swimming. In general, water quality is still very good in most of the watershed, particularly in Hopkinton, but Hopkinton and other towns are still growing with an increase in polluted runoff expected. The third reason is the Wood-Pawcatuck tributaries have extensive cold water fisheries where any increase in polluted runoff can have a very serious impact. It's estimated that native trout can only live in streams where the watershed has an impervious cover of only 4%, and it's also primarily forested. So even a slight increase in runoff can destroy the cold water fisheries and the native trout. Fourth, low impact development provides multiple benefits over conventional stormwater systems, as it provides more open space, more attractive vegetated treatment systems, and a functional landscape that helps to maintain recharge to groundwater. 5, lid is less expensive to install and maintain than conventional pipe drainage systems. 6, installing lid with new development provides much better water quality treatment and groundwater recharge, and is far less expensive than retrofitting drainage systems, which towns like Westerly are facing now. Finally, DEM plans to require that the town complete the lid assessment when the MS4 permit is updated. So doing it now means you already have that done and you've met the requirement. I've included some resources that I provided to the town clerk, which should be in the minutes, which includes the municipal self-assessment, which is an interactive PDF. There's also a fact sheet, a short fact fact sheet about the valid assessment, and a short fact sheet about what low impact development is. So I'm hoping that if you have any questions, we could discuss it now. And we're looking forward to beginning work with Hopkinton in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lorraine. Do we have any questions from the council? Jim, do you have any questions? Do you have anything to add to this maybe, or? I was just checking. I wasn't sure.
I think it's a great effort.
Okay.
It's a great effort. It's a big project. I'd like to see what they come up with for recommendations, and we can get them into our next update of the subdivision regulations.
Perfect.
Absolutely. Good effort.
Excellent. Awesome.
Thank you, Jay.
Excellent. I don't have any questions. Do you have any questions? We don't have any questions as a council right now. I think, I mean, I am going to support this for sure. I think it's, a great direction to go into. Do any of your other colleagues have any comments or anything? Or just checking?
I'm elated that the town council is interested in this. And Jim, thanks for your encouraging words. I agree. It's a very worthwhile process.
So I actually do have a question. When would this assessment start? Do you have a time frame?
We actually we could begin as soon as possible.
Okay.
Our intern is finishing another town and is ready to start another.
Okay.
We weren't sure whether you'd want to start until you have a new planner.
Okay. All right. And then, so another question is, other than, presenting it to the town, for review and stuff like that, is there anything else that's required from the town? Of
I
you?
think the work will begin after the student completes the first draft. That's when the town needs to make the hard decisions about which elements to change and begin the process of reviewing with other town staff.
Sure. And would there be interaction potentially while they are doing the assessment and all other stuff? Is there going to be just a request of maybe Public Works? Is there going to be, you know what I mean? Like, are there tools or requirements from the town that are going to facilitate this assessment that you're going to need from us? Meaning like, safety wise, you know what I mean? Are they, just kind of go through the kind of things that they're going to do to assess maybe. Could we
So
get some-
certainly if there's any questions during the process, we could participate in that.
Okay.
Chip, did you have any other comment on that part?
Yeah, so the one thing I wanted to point out here is that this LID assessment, in the end, it's providing recommendations, right? Recommendations that will improve and help encourage low impact development in our town for all the reasons that Lorraine spoke about. Certainly, this will fulfill an obligation to the state at some point when they do decide to make this a mandatory procedure. And I think that's great. And that alone seems to me that, with the Stewardship Council and Lorraine offering their assistance and support on this, I think it's a great opportunity to jump at. But what this does is actually outline some recommendations that might want to be considered, like Jim mentioned in the subdivision regulations and things like that. One thing that I would point out is that as the town, if and when the town decides to address some of those recommendations, the Stewardship Council may be able to help provide some support, both financial and just logistical support, and actually making those changes as well. You may have seen that Cassie just sent out that there was a town grant opportunity. That's a little bit different, but we're currently helping the town of Westerly develop a river overlay district, right? So there are opportunities for, as the town feels necessary to address some of these issues to try to improve the low impact development regulations, that the Stewardship Council is actually here to help with that as well. But just to be clear, the town, I don't want to diminish this, but the town is not obligated to immediately make these changes associated with it. This is
Mhm.
supposed to provide a guideline and a plan for, when the time comes that some of these regulations are up for, review and changes, that hopefully this will provide a plan to move forward and incorporate some of these changes.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Chip. Does anyone else here have a question or concern or anything?
Excellent, good presentation.
Excellent. So with that being said, I will take a vote just to, double check with the council here. Do I have a motion to approve this assistance?
I'll make a motion to approve this assistance.
Second,
All in favor?
Marvel, I.
Davis, I.
Chris, I.
Gary, aye.
And Moffat, aye. The motion passes. So I just want to thank you very much for this. I think, like Jim said, it's a very, very, very worthwhile. I think this is kind of why we all do what we do, hopefully to improve things. And I look forward to the results and to see what we have to work on. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time. I really appreciate it.
You got it.
Mhm.
Very good. Thank you. And great
Thank
job,
you.
Lorraine.
Yeah, thank you,
for-
Lorraine.
For organizing.
All right. Up next, under new business, number 3, senior exemptions program. Joe Moreau, Public Welfare Director is here to present something.
Good evening. My name is Joe Moreau from Old Depot Road. I'd like to thank our Council President, Steve Moffett, for putting this topic on our agenda tonight. Tiana, our tax assessor, will also have some information on this matter. I was elected to the position of Director of Public Welfare in November of 2020, the same as the town council members were. I believe we all share the same mindset, and that is to help our residents, especially those in their time of need. We have had many seniors that need our help. In my conversations with residents, there seems to be 3 items that particularly come up in most discussions. One is the heating oil assistance, which we've taken care of. And I want to thank you for putting that on the agenda. It's very clear now. If you look at our website, there's information on there for heating oil assistance. It's available at the town clerk's office. It's also available at the Crandall House. The other issue that comes up quite often is food assistance. And that I can take care of myself with the help of council members and other residents. The other thing that has come up is the issue of paying taxes. And some of these items are seasonal. Most times in the summertime, I don't hear about heating oil assistance. Now we hear about the taxes quite often. So, I asked myself the question, why are residents struggling so much? And when you look at the, especially our senior citizens, when you look at the benefit for Social Security, that went up 5.9%, which was one of the highest increases in quite a few years. The US inflation rate accelerated to 7.5%. I Googled that number today. So that's the highest since 1982. So when you look at those right away with the price of food, gasoline, heating oil, and other things, the residents that live on a fixed income, especially the seniors, they're behind the 8 ball before we even get started. Our town does have a senior exemption program for residents 65 and also for residents that are 85 and older. Again, it's on our website. If you click on departments and you drop down to the tax assessor page at the very end, it lists all of the breakdowns. And that's something that Tiana is going to be talking about. I want to tell you a quick story about this elderly woman that I've been helping for quite a few years, and I've mentioned her name before. Just last week, she mentioned this to me. She said, Joe, if I would have known about this senior exemption, she said, I could have lived in my home that much longer. Her husband had open heart surgery. She had a reverse mortgage on her home. So that was an issue with her. Her daughter had passed away and she was paying expenses for her daughter. When it came time to paying her taxes, her town taxes, She paid those from her savings. She just kept withdrawing from her savings. At the end, she didn't have enough money left and she had to sell that house. And she, as I said, we talked about this last week, and she said, I could have stayed there that much longer. I took her down here. We filled out the paperwork probably 4 or 5 years ago. She would have been eligible for the 60% evaluation category. So basically, if her home was evaluated at 300,000, she would have had 60% of that, or $180,000 that she would have paid taxes on. That would have made a huge difference for her to remain in her home. But unfortunately, it was too late in the process to help her with that. Before I turn this over to Tiana, I want to thank Tiana for her help. She's been very helpful with this whole process. I believe as elected officials and town employees, we need to do a better job to get the word out about senior exemption programs. We can say, well, it's on our website, it's on the back of our tax bill. I don't know how many people read the back of your tax bill. It just says tax exemption on the back of the tax bill. We need to do more to educate our seniors, some who do not have access to computers. I've said before that I've worked in retail my entire career. I'm familiar with budgets, P&Ls, et cetera. This should not be about the bottom line for our town. I believe that we need to do more to help our senior residents to stay in their homes as long as possible. They've worked hard and deserve as much help as possible in their golden years. You know, why do we have a senior exemption program if there isn't a whole out effort to get this out? And again, it's a catch-22, and I understand that. If you look at the lack of tax money that we may receive with some of the seniors versus having that money, I don't think we should look at that. I think we should look, as I said, we were all elected to help our residents, especially our seniors that really, in some cases, can't help themselves. And I see it time and time again when they have to make choices, you know, food, heating oil assistance, and paying their taxes. As people get older, they tend to pay their bills as quickly as they can. And then whatever is left is food, you know, possibly. But I think it's our responsibility that, I don't want to say forget about the bottom line, because that's an important issue, obviously, in the town. But I don't want to have to make a choice between paying taxes for someone, taking the money away from their food, and we don't enforce or reintroduce the tax exemption program. I just think it's a valuable resource, as I saw with the heating oil assistance. That's made a big difference. I've had a couple of seniors contact me in particular and say, thanks a lot for doing that. I said, well, it wasn't me that did it. There's a lot of people involved, but you know, it's nice that I can turn my heat up to a reasonable temperature at 65 during the day instead of 50 degrees. You know, so there are people that are struggling with the taxes. Again, I want to thank everyone, and I want to turn it over to Tiana at this point, and I want to thank her again for her help. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for what you do.
Tiana, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Joe. I just wanted to touch on a couple of the specifics of the senior exemptions. We do have two in town. One is an 85 or over exemption. That one is a blanket 10% exemption that just needs an application and proof of birth, like birthday, so ID or birth certificate. The other is a 65 or older senior exemption, and that one is an income-based exemption. That one is based on the Health and Human Service Poverty Guidelines, and it's based on the entire household's income. So it would be a husband and wife, or if there's a roommate or sons or daughters living there, it would include the entire household. And for both exemptions, you have to be an owner of your home, have to be a resident of Hopkinton for at least 5 years. And for the 65 or older exemption, that the maximum you could make is 45,775 for this year. So if you make under 45,775, based on how much you make, you can get anywhere between 10% and 60% off of the taxes. And I think that's it. I think that covers it.
Tia, I'm sure this is probably too much to be on the website, but is there anything on the town website, and this might not be directed to you, is if say I ran into somebody and I said, well, hey, you should apply for your tax exemption or you're over 65, where would people commonly find the information on this?
They could go to the assessor department page on the website, and all of our exemptions are listed on there, including like veterans and blind exemption. That goes over exactly what the breakdown is on the website as well. I don't have the figures in front of me, but it'll say exactly where you would fall in between 10 and 60%.
Excellent.
And also they can always just call.
I just want to add to this discussion too. I think, you know, if you want to talk about where do we find it, I think they should probably be able to find it on the front page of the website, I would think, you know, that maybe not have to like search for it necessarily, you know, I mean, it's probably a good start, I think, would be kind of not smack dab in the middle, but just a link right to it, not.
Yeah, that was actually my first thought. And then as an add-on thought, I wondered about creating a link to a page just for all senior services that Joe could have input to and say, you know, here's a page of all senior services that seniors might be able to benefit from, and then just list them and link to wherever the various.
Yeah, I mean, just
sources are.
various resources throughout.
Easy enough to
community,
do.
right,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Education.
I just want to say that as the person designated as the liaison for the Committee on Aging, we need to get that committee activated. I know I belong to the Wesley Senior Center in Richmond. I go to the Wesley one, and they did put a plug in their newsletter, but we need people on that, and so we can get that moving to address elder affairs in the town of Hopkinton. But we need manpower. You don't have to be a senior citizen to be on the committee, but we really need to get that going. And I do commend Joe Moreau, our Director of Public Welfare, for everything he's done to address a lot of these human service type things. Thank you.
Joe, did you have something else to say?
Lisa and her staff are very good as far as forwarding the information when residents call. And to Council Gary's point, I don't have a problem if someone speaks to a town council member and they're looking for some help for this. I'd like to talk to them on the phone. I can work with them. If I can meet with them, that's even better. And I can kind of help them through the rough spots. I think what we did, Jeff and the council, town manager, a lot of people are involved in this, are on the notes and events on a website as heating oil assistance. You click right on there now and it shows that whole brochure that's on there. Marita and Jeff had worked on that. Lisa was on vacation, I think, at the time. So I agree that should be one of the avenues right there. The deadline for this program is March 15th. So we can help some people hopefully this year, but moving forward, I think we can help and reach out to more people at that point. The other thing I thought of was, where do seniors gather? I know with COVID, it's been difficult. I've met a few times with Mary Sawyer at Crandall House. I've seen seniors in there. In fact, they have some of the brochures about the heating oil assistance program. So I thought that might be an avenue where we can get the message out for those people that do not have laptops or not familiar with the technology, that there was something at the Crandall House, a simple brochure or something that could refer them to myself or whoever to help them out. Just think it's very important to help those that really, unfortunately nowadays, they can't help themselves.
Sharon, did you?
Yeah, I wanted more clarification on for the people who are 85 and older, is it, you said, I guess I got the impression that they automatically got a 10% reduction? And they
It's
didn't?
not
It
necessarily
wasn't in-
automatic, because we don't know the birth dates of everybody. So it would be something that they have to apply for. They just have to fill out a form in our office and give us a copy of either their birth certificate, driver's license, identification, just some sort of proof of their age, and it would be a 10% off.
That's great. So it isn't income-based. That was the point.
No, not that one.
Would be a good spot.
Yeah, that's another good idea. Steve mentioned doctor's offices. It's a great idea because people do need help. They need help.
I think it is a good idea to have a one or two page brochure that lists all types of services with your contact information and possibly even, some.
And whether we provide those services or
Some,
or
yeah,
other
yeah,
places
yeah,
provide those
absolutely.
services. Yeah.
I know Lisa and Jeff did a great job to get my contact information on the website. It's under probably 5 or 6 different areas. But to Steve's point, you got to hunt and peck, to
Well, that-
find that.
That's where the idea of having a senior services
Yeah,
page
I think
that
like-
is on the menu.
Right,
Where you
on
go
the
look
menu
at,
where
right at
it's-
the top, and there's senior services, they just click on it and there's
Everything is
everything
there.
right there in front of them.
I like that. That's a great idea.
I mean, it'll notify them about the Crandall House,
Can be
stuff like that, that, hey, Woodriver Health Services is a medical provider, just
Sure.
kind of all those types of things. Obviously.
I'll touch base with Brian and Lisa and maybe we can work out some of the details.
That's great.
The one thing that
And
really
Mary
is kind of
Sawyer.
tough in town is the whole, transportation thing. It's
Yeah,
the,
it is.
years ago, I think it was federally funded. And I know this because my mother works for RIPTA and, she used to drive the paratransit down here and she'd be at the Crandall House every day, picking everybody up, taking them to the store, taking them shopping, taking them doing all kinds of stuff. I can't tell you the amount of people I used to have at my house, senior citizens at my house growing up, eating Thanksgiving dinner at my house because my mom would go pick them all up and bring them all to our house, and she's been kind of pecking at me a little bit about, because she knows Scott Avedisian, CEO up at the, what do you call it, trying to really get them to, focus down here in this area to kind of help us out a little bit with some transportation. Because I mean, part of that is that, if people are at their house all the time, they can't get out, they're kind of trapped and they don't have that information, I just think getting people out of their houses too will help. So that's just an added point, not a topic for discussion, but maybe a topic for another discussion another day.
I wish more people would be concerned, as your mother was, with people. When you see, and again, this woman, when she's sitting in her house and she has Stop and Shop delivering food and some other things, and she hadn't been out in quite a while. And I said, well, what's going on? And she said, well, I canceled my car insurance for the next 6 months or so. Because I can't pay that. My taxes are coming
Sure.
up. And, so there's a lot of things that we don't think about until people bring it to your attention. And as I said, I think we do a great job trying to respond to those requests. And I'm sure there's more out there. And I hope my phone is ringing off the hook. I really do, to help these people out.
Well, Joe, you've done one hell of a job getting
Thank
the
you.
word out since we've all been sitting here. And I really noticed the last pickup, the last 6-7 months is really coming to frame with oil, everything you've put out. And I commend you for that.
Thank you. I've got a lot of help from people too. All right.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you, Tiana.
Thank you. And I just do want to say with the senior exemptions as well, if there's a senior who can't get out of their house, I would go to a senior's house to go and get their paperwork from them as well.
Okay, thank you, Tiana. That's great. All right, up next, we have public forum. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to make any comments? State your name for the record, please.
Joe Moreau, Old Depot Road. Again, I just wanted to mention about something I've talked about and other people in this room have talked about, is getting residents to respond to the need for town charter, for the boards and commissions. Most recently, we had the town charter nominees. There were 4 residents that had put their name in. 2 were selected, 1 was denied. The 4th person had withdrawn his name on February 7th for other reasons. But I want to thank the many, many people that I've spoken to that contacted me, told me whether they did or not, I don't know. That had said they were going to send emails to the town council to voice their concerns over this one particular resident. I know I did see something, someone told me about something that was in the Wesley Sun, which I looked at online. But there are a lot of concerned residents out there, and I'm glad to see that we've got residents now that are applying for these boards and commissions. But I'm also glad to see that people are voicing their concerns to make sure we get the right people for those jobs. But it's a start. Hopefully we'll get more people to respond for boards and commissions. I think the communications committee is something that could help with that, and also with the things I talked about with what's available for our senior citizens. So I think it's a great start. Thank you. I don't know if anyone else wants to speak. It's up to them.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn in memory of the late Carl Devin, better known as Rick Devin, former town council member, and in honor of retiring town planner James Lampier.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
First, aye.
Marvel, I.
Davis, I.
Gary, I.
And Moffat, I motion passes.